Chapter 4404. Omega 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 choking with sobs. Novel. In the main hall of the one residence, Nie Tian sat upright on the main seat, giving off the aura of a powerful dragon suppressing a snake in its territory. To his left sat Fan Zhong, Tang 13, and the others. To his right sat an elegant white-clothed middle-aged man, a white-haired, green-clothed old man, and Wen Luan. The white-clothed middle-aged man was the head of the Wen clan, Wen Xiang, while the green-clothed old man was the housekeeper of the Wen clan, Wen Qingjiao. On the way to the Wen mansion, Nie Tian had already understood the general situation of the Wen family from Wen Lun. This was because the previous clan leader of the Wen clan, Wen Luan's grandfather, the four-tribulation flag master of the Feng Tianming sect, Wen Ho, was heavily injured and had been recuperating. Thus, the position of clan leader was passed on to his second son, Wen Xiang. All these years, Wen Xiang had always been in charge of the Wen family. Perhaps it was because Wen Xiang was a calm and low-key person, the Wen clan had not been in contact with the outside world for the past few years. Their reputation had also weakened a lot. But even so, the Wen clan was still a famous clan in the sacred world of seventh cultivators of true virtue. In the beginning, when Wen Ho was in charge of the Wen family, he had always been very ostentatious. Coupled with the strength of the Heavenly Fate sect, the Wen family had already become the #1 family in the seventh cultivator sacred world. Wen Ho himself was also very strong. He was one of the top figures in the seventh sacred cultivator world. There was a time when Wen Ho was carrying out a sect mission alone and was surrounded by a dozen sky martial divine ancestors. Not only did he not die, but he also killed a few of them and severely injured a few others. That this battle not only made the Heavenly Beacon sect famous, but it also made the Wen family famous in the seven cultivators' sacred world. But unfortunately, for some unknown reason, Wen Ho suddenly announced to the public that he was heavily injured, and then he recuperated at home and no longer concerned himself with the affairs of the sect. Nie Tian specifically asked about Wen Ho's injury, but Wen Luan did not explain clearly. Very according to Wen Luan, Wen Ho had been in closed-door cultivation for hundreds of years, and even he, the eldest grandson of the first wife, couldn't remember how long it had been since he last saw Wen Ho. Clan Leader Wen, sorry for disturbing you. Please forgive me. Nie Tian looked at Wen Xiang and smiled apologetically. Beacon Emperor, what are you talking about? Wen Xiang was very respectful as he nodded and said, Lord Beacon Emperor, it is my family's honor to have you graced us with your presence despite your busy schedule. Patriarch Wen is too courteous. Nie Tian smiled again. He didn't hold back and directly said, I won't hide it from the Wen clan leader, the reason I came here today was to pay my respects to Elder Wen Ho. Before coming to the Wen clan, Wen Luan was still worried that Nie Tian would harm the Wen clan. No, however, Nie Tian did not have this intention. He came to the Wen family mainly for Wen Ho. Feng the Destiny sect had declined because it was too weak. Since Tian Gang had just arrived at the sect, he naturally wanted to unite all the forces that could be united. Wen Ho was very strong. Back in the day, he was a peak figure in the seventh cultivator's sacred world. He was not any weaker than Ling Shuang Wuchen. If they could invite Wen Ho out of the Wen clan and make him the Sky Beacon Flag Master again, it would undoubtedly be a great help to the sect. When Wen Xiang heard the name Nie Tian, his gaze slightly sank. He was clearly unhappy, but he still respectfully said, Beacon Emperor, I'm really sorry, but I'm afraid you will be disappointed. My father was injured a long time ago, and has been in seclusion for a long time now. With that, he looked at Wen Luan and said, Lunar, did you not tell Lord Beacon Emperor about this? Second uncle, I. Wen Luan's expression sank and he was somewhat speechless. This matter cannot be blamed on Wen Luan. He has already told this empress, and this empress insisted on coming. Nie Tian smiled and lightly said, Actually, I don't have any other intentions. I just wanted to invite Senior Wen-ho to come out of seclusion. Beacon Emperor, I thank you for your kindness on my father's behalf. However, my father is still ill and can no longer contribute to the sect. Please forgive me, Beacon Emperor. When Xiang stood up and bowed to Nie Tian apologetically, Nie Tian nodded his head slightly and looked down at Fan Zhong. Fan he coughed dryly and sighed. Back in the day, I fought shoulder to shoulder with Brother Wen countless times. I didn't expect that after so many years, old friends would still be here. How could Wen Xiang not understand Fan Zhong's intentions? Thus, he spoke bluntly. How could Wen Xiang not understand Fan Zhong's intentions? I have only heard a little about Brother Fan's injuries. By the time I wanted to visit you, Brother Fan had already returned to the Wen mansion. Fan Zhong nodded and said, Patriarch Wen, I heard that Brother Fan's vitals were injured, is this true? Xiang frowned and seemed to be displeased, but he still nodded and said, My father destroyed his own lifeline because of a bet. Cripple my own lifeline? Fan Zhong's eyes flickered. He was extremely shocked. Back then, they had only heard that Wen-ho's life vein was injured, but they never expected that it was actually his own life vein that was destroyed. To a fate chart martial artist, the importance of the lifeline was almost equal to the origin meridian. Yu He was a cultivator from the Feng Tian Fate sect. He specialized in cultivating the lifeline. Even his martial arts and cultivation methods were built on the foundation of the lifeline. Under such circumstances, once his lifeline was destroyed, he would become a cripple. More importantly, the lifeline was closely related to a cultivator's life force. If the lifeline was destroyed, a cultivator's lifespan would definitely suffer fatal damage. And Wen-ho's injury happened tens of thousands of years ago. Now, was Wen-ho still alive? Didn't the Wen family claim that Wen-ho was recuperating, but the truth was that Wen-ho had already passed away? The possibility of this happening was not small. If the Wen clan wanted to maintain its original prestige, Wen-ho's presence was indispensable. Perhaps this was the reason why the Wen family had been so low-key all these years. Don't worry, flagged Master Fan. Even though my father's lifeline has been crippled, he's still alive. But he's currently in closed-door cultivation and isn't suitable to meet anyone. Wen Xiang had already guessed what Fan Zhong was thinking when he saw Fan Zhong's expression, and he nodded heavily. That's good. Fan Zhong realized that he had lost his composure and quickly nodded. He then looked at Nie Tian and said, Lord Beacon Emperor, since Brother Fan isn't suitable to meet anyone, let's go back. His meaning was obvious. He was telling Nie Tian that Wen-ho's lifeline had been destroyed and that he was worthless to the Feng Tian Fate sect. Staying here would be a waste of time. Nie Tian smiled faintly and looked at Wen Xiang. After a pause, he said, Patriarch Wen, if I say that I have a way to restore Senior Wen-ho's lifeline, would you believe me? Wen Xiang was startled at first, then his face sank and he said in a cold tone, Lord Beacon Emperor, please don't joke around. The lifeline was more complicated than a cultivator's Yuan meridian. Although there was a chance to restore a cultivator's Yuan meridian, it was extremely difficult. And moreover, the stronger a cultivator was, the more difficult it would be to restore a destroyed Yuan meridian. This was also the reason why those Saint Realm martial artists could never recover their Yuan meridians once they were destroyed. The same went for the lifeline, but it was even more difficult than the Yuan meridian. Dang Wen-ho's fate horoscope had already reached the fate Dao realm. After destroying it, there was no way to restore it. But now, Nie Tian said that he could restore Wen-ho's lifeline. This was clearly a provocation. Wen Xiang's patience in speaking was already giving Nie Tian, the Beacon Emperor, enough face. This emperor is not joking. This emperor does have a way to restore Senior Wen-ho's lifeline. However, Nie Tian's face was serious as he repeated himself. Baidu search 881 Chinese network yin. No advertising message. Chapter 4405. In the main hall of the Wen residence, Nie Tian's expression was solemn. Wen Xiang, Fan Zhong, and the others had strange expressions and complicated gazes. They clearly did not believe Nie Tian's words. Lifelines were the foundation of a cultivator's martial path and fate path. Once damaged, it was almost impossible to recover. Buta crippled lifeline was equivalent to a cultivator's fate path being completely destroyed. If Nie Tian said that he could restore a damaged lifeline, it might be believable. However, it was impossible to restore a crippled lifeline. Sir Beacon Emperor, there's no need to force things. Fan Zhong spoke after a while. Obviously, he still did not believe Nie Tian's words. Wen Ho's lifeline had been crippled for tens of thousands of years. With Fan Zhong's understanding of fate, it was impossible to recover. Sir Beacon Emperor, if you need the Wen family's strength, Wen Xiang can help you. However, there's no need to joke about my father's injury. Wen Xiang's eyes were cold. It was obvious that he was suppressing his anger. From his point of view, Nie Tian was joking about Wen Ho. How could he not know that Nie Tian had asked Wen Ho to help because he wanted to borrow the Wen family's strength? Feng Feng, the Heaven's Fate sect had declined. The Sky Beacon selection had put the sect in a dangerous situation. At this time, they naturally needed the support of a powerful force. Although the Wen family was not famous these years, they still had their strength. Moreover, Wen Luan was the top disciple of the Heaven's Fate sect. Naturally, they became the best target for Nie Tian to rope in. Wen Xiang kept rejecting because he did not want the Wen family to get involved. However, seeing how persistent Nie Tian was, it seemed like the Wen family could not avoid it. Actually, this was nothing. What really angered Wen Xiang was that Nie Tian had repeatedly brought up his father's injury. His words were full of mockery. He was simply humiliating the Wen family. The expressions of Shi Wenluan and the housekeeper of the Wen residence, Wen Qingjiao, changed as well. Their eyes darkened with obvious anger. Nie Tian could not help but laugh bitterly in his heart when he saw everyone's reactions. Such a reaction was within his expectations. As a cultivator who cultivated his fate chart, Nie Tian naturally understood the importance of his lifeline. Such as if someone had told Nie Tian that he could restore a crippled life vein before the 10th life vein appeared, he wouldn't have believed it either. But however, with the 10th vein, everything was different. The 10th meridian was the ultimate secret of the Fate Matrix. The Fate Matrix power contained within it was unimaginable to ordinary people. Nie the heavens dared to boast that Marquis Wen's life meridian could recover because of the 10th life meridian. Everyone, please take a look at my lifeline. Nie Tian did not explain anything. Instead, with a thought, the lifeline's aura was fully revealed. Fan Zhong, Wen Xiang, and the others were puzzled. They immediately sensed Nie Tian's lifeline and froze on the spot. They couldn't believe their eyes. Nie Tian had 10 life veins in his body. But how was this possible? 9 life veins was the limit of a fate chart martial artist. Furthermore, in the long river of history, there were very few martial artists with 7 or 8 lifelines, not to mention 9 lifelines. But Nie Tian actually had 10 lifelines. This was clearly a violation of the Tao of Fate. Don't tell me that Nie Tian has some special method that allows him to display 10 vital meridians? No. While everyone was still in shock, Fan Zhong suddenly thought of something and screamed. His voice became sharp. Could this be the legendary 10th life vein? The 10th life vein? Everyone was stunned. They had obviously never heard of the 10th life vein. The ultimate secret of the martial Tao fate chart. Wen Xiang also thought of something. His expression changed as he exclaimed in shock. Everyone else was stunned again. They still didn't know what the 10th life vein was. That's right. This is the 10th life vein. Nie Tian restrained the aura of his lifeline and smiled. Fan Zhong and Wen Xiang were dumbfounded. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that Nie Tian possessed the legendary 10th lifeline. Master Beacon Emperor, what is the 10th life vein? Wen Luan couldn't help but ask. Wenluan, you have 6, right? Nie Tian didn't explain. Instead, he smiled. Wenluan nodded. He did have 6 lifelines. He didn't think that Nie Tian would be able to tell at a glance. To be exact, you have 6.5 lifelines. Nie Tian smiled. Your 7th lifeline must have had some problems during the formation process. That's why you only managed to form half of it. Yes. Wenluan was stunned at first, then he nodded in surprise. Not only could Nie Tian tell that he had 6 lifelines, but he could also clearly see the other half. This kind of perceptive ability was too terrifying. With a faint smile, Nie Tian looked at Wenluan and said, I can fix your 7th life meridian right now. This. Wenluan's pupils constricted. His handsome face froze and he couldn't say a word. The incomplete 7th lifeline had always been a sore point for Wenluan. But mending a lifeline was easier said than done. Although there was only one difference between 6 and 7 lifelines, it was a world of difference for a martial artist. 7. The talent of the 7th lifeline was incomparable to 6 lifelines. The Wen clan had used a large amount of resources to try and fix Wenluan's 7th lifeline, but they all failed. Now that Nie Tian said he could fix Wenluan's 7th lifeline, how could Wenluan not be shocked? Wen Xiang and Fan Zhong were stunned as well. They couldn't react for a moment. Mending a lifeline was an important matter. For Nie Tian to say it out loud, it sounded like a joke. If you're willing, we can start right now, Nie Tian said with a faint smile, his face expressionless. What do I need to do? Wenluan asked in shock. You don't need to do anything. You just need to stay calm and focus. Leave the rest to me, Nie Tian said and gestured for Wenluan to sit down. Wenluan was shocked, but he still sat down with his legs crossed. Nie Tian also sat down. He felt Wenluan's breathing calming down, so he took a deep breath and got ready to start. Everyone watched nervously from the side. They held their breaths and didn't dare to breathe too loudly, afraid that they would disturb Nie Tian. In under everyone's gazes, a faint, translucent layer of faint, green light appeared around Nie Tian. Like a protective shield, it gradually enveloped Wenluan. What a powerful life force! Fan Zhong and the others were shocked when they saw this. That the seemingly unremarkable green halo was actually filled with boundless life force upon closer inspection. It was like a boundless sea of stars. Is this the power of the 10th lifeline? Everyone was fascinated, their faces were full of respect. Green Wenluan, who was enveloped by the colorful halo, first felt a slight itch on his skin. Then, waves of incomparably pure life force surged into his body, causing every pore, every bone, every nerve, and every drop of blood in his body to be in a highly active state. This active state lasted for a long time. Wenluan felt a surge of energy being released. It was his 7th lifeline starting to grow. Chapter 4406. Inside Wenluan's body, a power as vast as the sea erupted. The rich life force was like a broken dam, rushing into his limbs and meridians. At this moment, Wenluan could clearly feel that his body was undergoing a nirvanic transformation. Not only was the incomplete 7th life meridian growing, but the other bones, flesh, and meridians were also growing stronger. The sound of life bursting forth was mysterious and magical. Fan Zhong and the others gazed at Wenluan, and they were dumbstruck when they sensed the shocking changes within the latter's body. At this moment they were shocked to the extreme. Difficult, they could not believe that they had witnessed the miracle of the lifeline with their own eyes. Moments later, the green halos around Nie Tian and Wenluan's bodies began to fade and soon disappeared. Nie Tian stood up. His entire body was already drenched in sweat. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper, without the slightest trace of blood. Even his cheeks had become thinner, making him look somewhat frightening. Lord Beacon Emperor. Seeing this, Fan Zhong immediately stepped forward and supported Nie Tian. Nie Tian waved his hand to indicate that he was fine. He nodded and said, "His 7th meridian has been repaired. At this moment Luan also stood up. His entire body looked as if it was brand new, and his entire body was emitting a surging life aura. When the 7 life veins were completely mended, it was like when Luan had broken out of a cocoon and was reborn. Furthermore, when Luan, who had been heavily injured by Feng Li, had completely recovered. "Thank you, Sir Beacon Emperor." When Luan was extremely emotional as he bowed to Nie Tian. He wanted to kneel down, but Nie Tian held him up. "This empress only did what she could, there is no need to be so polite." Nie Tian smiled faintly. He then glanced at the dumbfounded Wen Xiang. "Patriarch Wen, you should now believe that I have the ability to help Senior Wen Ho." Xiang Ru felt like he was in a dream. Only then did he react. He bowed deeply to Nie Tian and said solemnly, "I was rash. Please forgive me, Beacon Emperor." "Patriarch Wen, you don't have to do this." Nie Tian helped Wen Xiang up and smiled. Senior Wen Ho was once the flag lord of the Feng Tian Fate sect and made great contributions to the sect. Although I'm here to ask Senior Wen Ho to come out of seclusion, I'm also feeling guilty and sincerely want to help Senior Wen Ho. As for whether Senior Wen Ho will continue to serve the Feng Tian Fate sect, it will be up to you. I will not force you. Wen Xiang thanks the Beacon Emperor on behalf of my father. Wen Xiang was moved and bowed to Nie Tian again. His gaze flickered as he thought to himself, although Nie Tian, the new Beacon Emperor, is very young, he knows how to manage his subordinates. Not only does he know how to use kindness and authority, he also knows how to move people with emotions. With the Beacon Emperor, the Destiny sect would definitely rise. At this moment, Fan Zhong was completely determined to follow Nie Tian. "Now, I'll have to trouble Patriarch Wen to invite Senior Wen Ho out." Nie Tian smiled faintly. He couldn't wait to see 4 Calamity Flag Master Wen Ho. "Beacon Emperor, you must be tired today. Why don't you rest here for the night and I will invite my father out tomorrow?" Wen Xiang hesitated and bowed slightly. "Don't worry, Patriarch Wen. I will recover very quickly." Nie Tian, of course, knew what Wen Xiang was thinking and smiled. Wen Xiang was worried that Nie Tian had used up too much energy to repair Wen Luan's life veins, so he wasn't in a hurry to ask Wen Ho out. But to help Wen Ho recover his life veins, it must be done without any mistakes. "Beacon Emperor, since I have agreed to let my father out, why are you in such a hurry?" Wen Xiang was still worried and frowned. "Then I will temporarily stay here for the night. I will see Senior Wen Ho tomorrow." Nie Tian couldn't help but smile bitterly. Since Wen Xiang was so insistent, he didn't force it anymore. That night, Nie Tian's group was arranged to stay in a special courtyard in the Wen Mansion. In the small courtyard, Nie Tian and Tang 13 stood side by side. "Nie Tian, are you really going to hold the Beacon Sky selection in front of the All-Heaven Sacred World?" Tang 13 was worried and asked. Nie Tian nodded and said, "This is a chance for the Beacon Sky sect to rise again, and also a challenge for me. There are still a few old monsters in the Azura clan. Although I can't invite all of them, I can call 1 or 2 if I ask. It's always good to have a few experts to hold the line." Tang 13 paused and smiled. He was the Holy Demon Blood Kaiser of the Azura clan, but he didn't have absolute control over the Azura clan. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He was still hesitating if he should inform Scarlet Life Dan Xin and the others. Except, the Beacon Sky selection would definitely be a fierce battle. It might even create a huge wave in the All-Heaven Sacred World. It would be great if there were experts to hold the line. However, this would undoubtedly attract even more powerful covetous eyes. Just for now, as long as the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion or the Human Emperor's Palace didn't interfere, Nie Tian wasn't too afraid. He was afraid that the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion and the Human Emperor's Palace would interfere. "I hope it won't alarm the Human Emperor's Palace." Nie Tian sighed and prayed in his heart. because the reason why he wanted to see Wen-ho so badly was because he was preparing for the Beacon Sky selection. Although Wen-ho was only a banner leader, his strength at his peak far surpassed people like Fan Zhong and Shin Yunha. If he could recover quickly, he would definitely become a mainstay of the Beacon Sky sect. Nie Tian and Tang 13 chatted for a while, and were about to return to their rooms when Wen Luan unexpectedly came to visit. Beacon Emperor, thank you for mending my lifeline. Wen Luan walked over slowly and looked at Nie Tian with respect. It's nothing. No need to be so polite. Nie Tian smiled. It wasn't a big deal to him, so Wen Luan didn't have to come all the way to thank him. No. Since Wen Luan was here, he could talk to him and learn more about the Wen clan's situation. As they chatted, Nie Tian had a better understanding of the Wen clan's overall situation. Sir Beacon Emperor, if you really want the Beacon Sky sect to rise again, there's a clan that will be of great help to the sect once you subdue it, Wen Luan couldn't help but say. He didn't know Nie Tian for long, but he could see the latter's ambition. Which clan? Nie Tian was startled and asked curiously. The Wind Demon's clan. Wen Luan nodded. Ghost Dance of 8 Winds. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he recalled the duel between Feng Li and Wen Luan. At that time, Feng Li had defeated Dark Blade He Han with ease. Then, he fought Wen Luan. Although he lost, he displayed great strength. Judging from Feng Li's strength, the Wind Demon's clan behind him was indeed extraordinary. The Wind Demon's clan is very close to the Gia sect now, but this doesn't mean that they're truly loyal to the Gia sect. Wen Luan's eyes trembled as he said, If Sir Beacon Emperor wants to, I can ask Second Uncle to meet with the Feng clan's leader. I'll think about it. Nie Tian nodded after some thought. The Wind Demon's clan was indeed powerful, but not to the point where Nie Tian was tempted. Purpose taking care of Wen-ho's matter first was more important. Wen Luan, do you have something to say? At this moment, Nie Tian noticed that Wen Luan's expression was a bit strange. He seemed to want to say something but was hesitant. I think there's something wrong with my lifeline. Wen Luan was a bit embarrassed but still said it. Nie Tian frowned. Could it be that he didn't repair Wen Luan's lifeline completely? Chapter 4407. Nie Tian sensed Wen Luan's lifeline and was stunned. Wen Luan originally had 6 lifelines. With the addition of a damaged lifeline, he had 6.5 lifelines. With Nie Tian's help, the damaged life meridian had already been completely repaired. At first, Nie Tian sensed 7 complete lifelines and there was nothing abnormal. But the next moment, he discovered something unbelievable. Besides the 7 lifelines, there was another damaged lifeline. Other than the 7 complete lifelines, there was another damaged lifeline. How was this possible? Nie Tian sure was stunned and couldn't react for a long time. Tang 13 watched from the side. Although he didn't know what happened, seeing Nie Tian's reaction, he knew that it was something unbelievable. Hence, he didn't dare to speak. Moments later, when Nie Tian's expression had recovered a bit, Wen Luan asked worriedly, Beacon Sovereign, is my lifeline all right? Nie Tian let out a long breath. At this moment, he didn't know what to say. After mending the damaged life vein, another damaged life vein appeared. This was simply too unbelievable. No had already sensed Wen Luan's lifeline a few times. There was nothing abnormal. From the looks of it, Wen Luan's lifeline was normal. However, Nie Tian wasn't sure, so he couldn't make a judgment. It shouldn't be a big deal. Nie Tian nodded and said, Wen Luan, don't tell anyone about this for now. He was worried that if this was leaked, it would be disadvantageous to Wen Luan. After all, this kind of thing was too shocking. Moreover, before the matter was cleared up, even if the Wen family knew, it wouldn't help and would only increase their worries. Wen Luan nodded, but his gaze was strange. He looked like he wanted to say something but was hesitant. Nie Tian could tell what Wen Luan wanted to say and said, Wen Luan, your lifeline isn't stable yet. I'm going to observe it for a while more. If it's stable, I'll help you mend the new damaged lifeline. It was obvious that Wenluan was thinking if the new half-damaged lifeline could be mended. If that was the case, he would have 8 lifelines. This lifeline was second only to the Beacon Emperor. However, it was too hasty to repair Wenluan's lifeline at this time. Moreover, Nye Tian couldn't be sure that Wenluan's lifeline was really normal. I was too impatient. Wenluan knew that he was too impatient and said with some embarrassment. Nye Heaven smiled faintly and did not say anything. Nye Tian, this kid's lifeline seems to be an inborn extraordinary meridian. At that moment, Fat Cat's voice was heard, stunning Nye Tian. First, what was the Heaven's extraordinary meridian? Legend has it that congenital extraordinary meridians are a very special kind of lifeline. They are different from ordinary lifelines. Apart from containing life force, they also contain some kind of bloodline power. The Fat Cat explained. If I'm not mistaken, his lifeline should be the 7 broken lifeline. Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he was taken aback. Yes. Little Fat Cat nodded its head heavily and said, the 7 broken life meridians are innately broken. The biggest characteristic is that no matter how many life meridians a martial artist condenses, there will always be one that is incomplete. Nye Tian was stunned. He didn't expect there to be such a strange thing in this world. Difficult so, Wenluan really had the 7 broken lifeline? I've only heard of the 7 broken lifeline before, but I've never seen it before. The Fat Cat let out a sigh and said, if it wasn't for what happened just now, I wouldn't have thought of the 7 broken lifeline. Nye Tian nodded slightly in agreement. After all, before the birth of the 10th lifeline, repairing the lifeline was something that rarely happened. If Wenluan really has the 7 broken lifeline, doesn't that mean that his lifeline can be regenerated infinitely? At that moment, Nye Tian suddenly thought of something and said with a trembling gaze. The 7 broken lifeline was completely repaired and the 8th broken lifeline appeared. If the 8th broken lifeline was completely repaired, wouldn't the 9th broken lifeline appear? Based on this, wouldn't Wenluan have 9, 10, or even more than 10 vital veins? Of course, that's impossible. The Fat Cat, of course, knew what Nye Tian meant. It laughed and said, normally, 9 lifeline is the limit. You're a special case, that's why you have the 10th lifeline. Although you can help him repair the 7th broken lifeline, you might not be able to repair the 8th, let alone the 9th. Nye Tian's eyes darkened slightly. He immediately understood what the Fat Cat meant. The value of the 8th lifeline was far greater than the 7th lifeline. The difficulty of repairing it was also much greater. Just even if Nye Tian really helped Wenluan repair the 8th lifeline, the 9th broken lifeline would be almost impossible to repair if Wenluan gave birth to another broken lifeline. Although the power of the 10th lifeline was strong, it had its limit. It couldn't be repaired infinitely. Since the 7 broken lifeline is an innate extraordinary meridian, it shouldn't be as simple as just half a broken meridian, right? Nye Tian became cold and couldn't help but ask. It was the first time he had heard of innate extraordinary meridian, so he was naturally very curious. Of course. The Fat Cat's eyes trembled slightly. Every innate extraordinary meridian contains a certain kind of bloodline power in the lifeline. The 7 broken lifeline is no exception. Apart from having a life force that is far stronger than ordinary lifelines, it also contains a powerful 7 broken power. 7 broken power? Nye Tian was stunned again. He immediately looked at Wenluan and sensed the latter's aura, but he didn't find anything unusual. Sir Beacon Emperor, are you okay? Wenluan saw Nye Tian looking at him with a strange expression and couldn't help but feel strange. Nye Tian also felt that the atmosphere was a bit strange, so he waved his hand awkwardly. His lifeline hasn't been activated yet, so he hasn't released the 7 broken power yet. The Fat Cat spoke again. The activation of the 7 broken power requires a certain kind of power. What kind of power? Nye Tian's eyes trembled as he asked. 7 remnant powers, 1 force 7 remnant powers. It's an extremely terrifying weakening power. The fat cat thought for a moment and said, any martial artist who is hit by the 7 broken power will have their strength greatly reduced, and even their martial arts foundation will be seriously damaged. That's terrifying. Nie Tion's expression changed, and he was quite surprised. It was rare to see a power that could directly damage one's martial arts foundation. Yes. The fat cat nodded and thought for a long time before saying, the activation of the 7 broken power requires a powerful life chart rune. Unfortunately, there are very few life chart martial artists nowadays who can carve life chart runes, let alone life chart runes of that level. Life chart rune. When Nie Tion heard these words, his eyes flashed with a hint of passion as he suddenly thought of something. Life chart rune. When Nie Tion and Tang 13 had been in the Heaven's Mandate sect, they had seen numerous stone statues standing at the entrances of the mountain peak. These stone statues were full of life chart runes and soul chart runes. Chapter 4408. Seeing Nie Tion's reaction, Fat Cat had long since guessed what he was thinking. Laughing, it said, don't even think about taking those stone statues. The fate patterns on them are no small matter. Not to mention the fact that they're very difficult to remove. Even if you could, you'd have to be very careful. Why? Nie Tion frowned, a little confused. I have already said that the statues are an array. The statues themselves are the runes of the array, and the runes on them are essential to the formation of the array. If they are missing, the entire array will be affected, Fat Cat said in a low voice. There are so many statues. It should be fine to just take a few runes. Nie Tion's lips twitched. Don't you understand that? Little Fat Cat said in annoyance and then stopped talking. Nie Tion had a helpless expression and could only bitterly smile. After Wenlun left, Nie Tion and Tang 13 returned to their own rooms to rest. Early the next morning, Wenlun arrived at the yard. His face was full of excitement and he said, Mr. Beacon Emperor, second uncle wants you to go now. Okay. Nie Tion nodded. Of course, he knew that the second uncle Wenlun was talking about was the clan leader of the Wen clan, Wen Xiang. Very quickly, Nie Tion and the others arrived at the hall. Seeing them, Wen Xiang came out to greet them. Clan leader Wen, can we go see Senior Wen Ho now? Nie Tion saw Wen Xiang and didn't waste any time. Mr. Beacon Emperor, please wait. I have sent the housekeeper over. My father will be here soon. Wen Xiang faintly smiled and signaled for Nie Tion to sit down. Nie Tion nodded and sat down. Clan leader, something bad has happened. A moment later, the butler, Wen Qingjiao, appeared. However, he had rushed over frantically, looking like he had lost his head out of fear. Uncle Qingjiao, what happened? Wen Xiang stood up. Though he was trying his best to stay calm, it was obvious that he was panicking. Wenus, the head steward of the Wen mansion, Qingjiao was of the same generation as the previous patriarch, Wen Ho, so Wen Xiang called him Uncle Qingjiao. Although Wen Qingjiao was not considered a powerful person in the Wen family, his status was very high and his words carried a lot of weight. Furthermore, he had always been steady and reliable. For him to panic like this today, something big must have happened. Wen Xiang had just asked him to invite Wen Ho out of seclusion, but he had run back in such a hurry. Could it be that something had happened to Wen Ho? When Qingjiao strode into the hall, his gaze sweeping across Nie Tion and the others with a hesitant expression. Uncle Qingjiao, the Beacon Emperor and the others are not outsiders. Just tell us what happened. Wen Xiang saw Wen Qingjiao's hesitation and said directly, Patriarch, the Patriarch has disappeared. Wen Qingjiao paused for a moment before finally saying, Gone. Wen Xiang's eyes trembled. He did not understand what Wen Qingjiao meant. Noise, he's gone? However, Wen Ho had always been in closed-door training in the Wen residence. How could he have disappeared? Wen Qingjiao nodded with an ugly expression on his face. Lead the way. Wen Xiang's face was cold and solemn as he growled. Wen Qingjiao answered and immediately led the group to where Wen Ho was in closed-door training. Although the Wen residence was not too big, it was still dozens of miles wide. There were pavilions, terraces, buildings, and trees in the residence. There were also arrays set up everywhere. There were many paths that were rugged and complicated. Under Wen Qingjiao's lead, Nie Tian and the others came to a deep path in the backyard of the Wen residence. So Wen Ho is in closed-door training here. Nie Tian looked at the deep path in front of him and nodded to himself. Along the way, they had passed through no less than a dozen formations. But there were also powerful arrays in front of them, especially in the small path, which was filled with powerful array patterns. Although the holy arrays in the Wen residence were not too strong and did not pose a fatal threat to the sky martial divine ancestors, it was not easy to pass through them. Estimate. These holy arrays were not to kill the intruders, but to expose the intruders' identities. It was not difficult to pass through the holy arrays, but it was difficult to pass through without making a sound. Beacon Emperor, in front of us is the Wen family's secret place. Please wait here. Wen Xiang looked at Nie Tian and gestured for him not to enter. Nie Tian agreed and waited outside the small path. Wenlun Lanqing, Lan Che, and the others did not enter either. Instead, they waited with Nie Tian and the others. When the Wen family's secret place was the most mysterious place in the Wen family. Even for the Wen family members, only the elders could enter, let alone outsiders. Even though Wen Luan was the eldest grandson, he could only wait outside obediently. Don't worry, it should be fine. Nie Tian saw that Wen Luan was a little nervous and nodded to comfort him. Wen Luan frowned and the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. Everyone waited outside for a long time before Wen Qingjiao finally appeared. However, Wen Xiang and Wen Ho were not there. Grandfather Qingjiao, what happened? Wen Luan saw Wen Qingjiao and asked hurriedly. Wen Qingjiao's face was gloomy. His gaze swept across everyone and he said in a deep voice, "The patriarch asked you to enter. Go to the secret land?" Wen Luan was stunned for a moment and asked with a stunned expression. The Wen family's secret place was not accessible to ordinary people. Nie Tian and the others were outsiders, but Wen Xiang asked them to enter. What was going on? Yes. Wen Qingjiao nodded. He looked haggard and helpless. Please lead the way, senior. Nie Tian also sensed that something bad had happened and spoke in a deep voice. However, Fan Zhong looked at Nie Tian worriedly. He was afraid that this might be a trap set by the Wen family to lure Nie Tian into the Wen family's secret place. Although Wen Ho was in charge of the Wen family had a close relationship with the Feng Tian Fate sect. However, the current Wen family was very close to the Wen Demons clan. Wen the Ghost clan supported the Gia sect, so it was not strange for Fan Zhong to be worried. Nie Tian looked at Fan Zhong and nodded, indicating that the latter should not be nervous. Although Nie Tian did not know much about Wen Xiang, but according to his observation, the latter was not a sinister person. Moreover, Wen Qingjiao's current expression was indeed sorrowful. He should not be faking it. Wen Qingjiao led the way while Nie Tian and the others followed closely. After passing through the deep path, the world in front of them suddenly opened up as if they had entered another world. As far as the eye could see, there were mountains and rivers thousands of miles high up in the sky. Very obviously, the Wen family's secret place was a small world, similar to the ancestral land of some big families. Wen Luan was also shocked. Although he was a member of the Wen family, it was his first time coming to this secret place. Sir Beacon Emperor, please follow me. Wen Qingjiao nodded slightly and led the group along a narrow path. Soon, they arrived outside a narrow valley. Wen Xiang was standing at the entrance of the valley, obviously waiting for Nie Tian and the others. Master Wen, what happened? Nie Tian walked forward quickly. Seeing Wen Xiang's gloomy face, his heart sank. Something happened to my father. Wen Xiang frowned and said in a deep voice. Chapter 4409. Wen Xiang's face was dark and his chest was heaving up and down. It was obvious that he was suppressing his anger. What happened? Nie Tian was very calm as he looked at the valley. Wen Xiang did not explain and led Nie Tian and the others into the valley. The valley was not big, only a dozen meters in radius. It was very tidy and there were no rocks or weed. It was like a secluded courtyard. At the center of the valley there was a pool. It did not look deep and a thick layer of green mist floated above the water. It emitted a strong smell of medicine that filled the entire valley. It was obvious that this was a medicinal pool. Judging from the smell, the medicinal pool contained extremely dense life force. After observing the entire valley, Nie Tian immediately came to a realization and asked, "Senior Wenho is in secluded cultivation in this medicinal pool?" "Yes." Wen Xiang nodded. Father was in isolation in the medicinal pool before this, but now he has disappeared. Nie Tian's eyes darkened. Because Wenho's life meridian was destroyed, his life was in danger. Therefore, he had to stay in the medicinal pool and continuously absorb life force to survive. The cost of this medicinal pool was not cheap. Maintaining it for tens of thousands of years would be too much for the Wen clan. But compared to the cost, Wenho's life was more important. After a moment of pondering, Nie Tian asked, "Clan Master Wen, can you confirm when Senior Wenho disappeared?" "Today." Wen Xiang nodded. His eyes were shaking. "To be exact, just now." "Just now?" Nie Tian's eyes flickered with astonishment. "Are you sure?" Wen Xiang nodded. "Though Father has been in isolation for a long time, I have been very careful. I came to check almost every day. Because I confirmed yesterday that I would ask Father to come out. So last night I came to check. At that time, Father was still here." Then, Wen Xiang looked at Wen Qingjiao and continued, "This morning, I came to check again to make sure Father was fine. Then, I went to the main hall and asked Uncle Qingjiao to ask Father to come out. The clan leader asked me to ask the patriarch to come out. I didn't waste any time and came without stopping. But when I arrived, the old master had already disappeared." Wen Qingjiao continued Wen Xiang's words. Nie Tian's expression changed slightly when he heard what the two of them said. He said in a low voice, "In that case, Senior Wenho did not see him when the two of you were not around." "Yes." Wen Xiang nodded and sighed deeply. "It's not that long, not more than half an hour. Then could Senior Wenho still be in this secret place?" Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he exclaimed in surprise. He seemed to have thought of something. "It's possible." Wen Xiang immediately understood and shouted. He turned around and said, "Uncle Qingjiao, quickly go and inform the clan's elder council. Tell them to send people to the secret place." "Yes." Wen Qingjiao answered and turned to leave, but he was stopped by Nie Tian. "Sir Beacon Emperor, you." Wen Qingjiao frowned and looked at Nie Tian in confusion. Nie Tian thought for a moment and did not care about anything. He said to Wen Luan, "Wen Luan, go with the housekeeper." Wen Luan was stunned at first, but he immediately understood Nie Tian's meaning. Although he was a little unwilling, he still nodded. The two of them did not delay and immediately left. "Sir Beacon Emperor, are you suspecting Uncle Qingjiao?" Wen Xiang looked at the two disappearing figures and could not help but frown. How could he not see that Nie Tian asked Wen Luan to go with them because he did not trust Wen Qingjiao? He was the first person to discover that Senior Wenho was missing. If Senior Wenho really had an accident or was kidnapped, he is undoubtedly the most suspicious. Nie Tian's expression was solemn and cold. Wen Xiang frowned and his expression was very ugly, but he did not know what to say. Things had happened too suddenly. He was indeed a little flustered just now. If Wenho had been kidnapped, he should still be in the secret place. At the very least, he had not left the Wen residence. Senior Wenho is in seclusion here, so there should be very few people who know. Also, the secret place is protected by many formations. Those who could enter the secret place without a sound must be from the One residence, and their status must not be low. Nie Tian disregarded Wen Xiang's expression and said solemnly. Wen Xiang said. Wen Xiang's gaze trembled and his expression changed again. Even if he was unwilling to believe it, he had to admit that there was definitely a mole in the One residence. Just as Nie Tian said, in the entire One residence, there were no more than 10 people who could enter the secret place without a sound. We only confirmed it yesterday. Today, we invited Senior Wen Ho out of seclusion. Senior Wen Ho disappeared today. Does Patriarch Wen think that this is a coincidence? Nie Tian's gaze was dark and his eyes surged with a cold, murderous intent. He hated traitors the most in his life. He wanted to kill every single one he saw. Although Wen Xiang was very unwilling, he still nodded. Yesterday in the Great Hall, other than Nie Tian and the others, the Wen family only had Wen Xiang, Wen Qingjiao, Wen Luan, and Wen Luan's 2 handmaidens, Lan Qing and Lan Che. Nie Tian and the others were also suspects when Wen Ho disappeared. However, it was obviously impossible for them to enter the Wen residence's secret place without anyone knowing. Also, Nie Tian and the others did not know where Wen Ho was in seclusion. In this way, the Wen family's own people were the most suspicious. Wen Luan, Lan Qing, and Lan Che also could not enter the secret place, and they did not have any motive. In this way, there were only Wen Xiang and Wen Qingjiao left. Wen Xiang was the patriarch of the Wen family and Wen Ho's son. He could not betray. Then, it was obvious who the traitor was. Could it really be Uncle Qingjiao? Wen Xiang had obviously thought through everything. His eyes trembled slightly in disbelief. Ever since Wen Ho took control of the Wen family, Wen Qingjiao had always been one of the most important people in the Wen family. From a certain point of view, Wen Qingjiao was even more important than Wen Ho. After all, he had been the patriarch's chief steward for 2 generations. Wen Xiang believed that he and his father had not wronged Wen Qingjiao, so why would the latter do such a thing? Patriarch 1, it is still too early to make a conclusion. Nie Tian naturally knew what Wen Xiang was thinking and said in a heavy tone. Then, Nie Tian looked at Fan Zhong and said after a long time, Fan Zhong, this emperor has said before that this emperor will not look into what you have done in the past. However, this emperor hopes that you can confess. Fan Zhong looked like he was in a difficult position. After a few seconds of silence, he finally said, Lord Beacon Emperor, this subordinate has indeed made a deal with someone from Gia sect. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He was not too surprised and signaled for Fan Zhong to continue. In fact, Nie Tian had already confirmed that Fan Zhong must have made some kind of deal with Gia sect when he was at Feng Tian Fate sect. Otherwise, the latter would not have wanted to kill him. At this time, Fan Zhong had already surrendered, so Nie Tian did not want to look into it. However, now that such a big thing had happened to the Wen family, Nie Tian could not help but suspect Gia sect. Since Fan Zhong had come into contact with Gia sect, perhaps he could get some information from him. Fan Zhong took a deep breath and was about to continue speaking when he was interrupted by a scream. Chapter 44:10. Nie Tian, Wen Xiang, and the others heard Wen Luan's scream and immediately rushed over. From afar, they saw Wen Luan and Wen Qingjiao fighting. Wen Qingjiao, it's really you. Wen Xiang's face sank when he saw this. He let out a roar and charged forward. Second uncle, show mercy. Wen Luan felt Wen Xiang's killing intent, but he panicked a little and shouted loudly. Wen Xiang frowned and struck out with his palm. A powerful force surged and enveloped Wen Qingjiao, controlling him. Wen Luan took the opportunity to retreat 10 meters away. Ah! Wen Xiang's figure landed on the ground. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Wen Qingjiao howling like a ferocious wolf. His eyes were bloodshot and his aged face was twisted with rage. He seemed to have fallen into a state of madness. Wen Xiang's face darkened when he saw this. He felt strange. The crazed Wen Qingjiao was like a different person compared to the person he usually saw. It was too strange. Second uncle, Grandpa Qingjiao seems to be under someone's control? Wen Luan came to Wen Xiang's side and said with a dark face. Wen Xiang observed Wen Qingjiao and felt the latter's aura was very chaotic. Curse mark. At this moment, Nie Tian and the others arrived. Nie Tian looked at Wen Qingjiao and uttered two words. Curse mark? Wen Xiang and Wen Luan's expressions changed at the same time. They looked at Nie Tian in shock. Nie Tian nodded and confirmed, there is a strong curse mark in his body. He is under someone's control. This. Wen Xiang's heart sank and he was speechless. Wen Qingjiao was the head butler of the Wen clan and one of the most important people in the clan. How could he be controlled? When did he get controlled? The aura of this curse mark, where have I seen it before? Nie Tian didn't know much about curse marks and didn't dare to make a move. However, he felt that the aura of the curse mark in Wen Qingjiao's body was familiar. Su Tu. Tang 13's eyes trembled and she said a name. Nie Tian reacted immediately and nodded. Of previously, when the Gia sect challenged the Feng Tian Fate sect, Su Tu was the first one to show up. He used a curse power during the battle and its aura was very similar to the one in Wen Qingjiao's body. Bam! At this moment, Wen Qingjiao roared and broke free from Wen Xiang's control. Wen Xiang's body swayed uncontrollably from the impact, his face filled with shock. Wen Qingjiao only had the strength of the first level of the Heaven Realm, while he was an expert of the 8th level of the Heaven Realm. How could the former escape his control? Roar. Wen Qingjiao broke free from Nie Tian's control and roared like a wild beast. A violent aura surged around his body as he pounced towards Nie Tian's group. It's the power of the curse, everyone be careful. Nie Tian's eyes darkened, and the sky sword appeared in his hand. The sword essence gushed out like a tide, spreading towards Wen Qingjiao. Pang, however, the sword intent surged like a waterfall, but it didn't have much killing power. It was just to control Wen Qingjiao. Don 13, Wen Luan, and the others retreated and watched from afar. Nie Heaven's sword intent was very strong. As it descended, it actually suppressed Wen Qingjiao. This guy is so scary. When Wen Xiang saw this scene, his expression could not help but change, and he was extremely shocked in his heart. Nie Tian Mingming only had the cultivation of a saint king in the 9th heaven tribulation, yet he could suppress a cultivator in the 1st heaven realm in a berserk state. That was too terrifying. Wen Xiang knew that since Nie Tian was the beacon emperor of the Feng Tian Fate sect, his strength was not something an ordinary martial artist of the same level could compare to. However, he guessed that Nie Tian's battle strength was at most similar to Wen Luan's. But now, it seemed that Nie Tian was much stronger than Wen Luan. Beacon Emperor, be careful! But right at this moment, Fan Zhong suddenly shouted. His silhouette flickered as he slammed out with his palm. Palm energy gushed forth, condensing into a terrifying palm silhouette that pressed down on Wen Qingjiao. As it turned out, although Nie Tian's sword intent was strong, it was still insufficient to suppress the berserk Wen Qingjiao. Fan Zhong reacted quickly. Before Wen Qingjiao could break free from the control of the sword intent, he immediately attacked. Don't hurt him! Nie Tian's eyes trembled violently as he exclaimed. Wen Qingjiao suddenly became so berserk. There must be someone behind it. If now that Guo Wen Qingjiao was dead, it would be difficult to ferret out the mastermind behind this. Boom! Just as Nie Tian's voice fell, the huge palm silhouette fell like a huge mountain, directly pressing down on Wen Qingjiao. Wen Xiang's expression changed when he saw this scene, and he cried out in alarm. Wen Qingjiao was very likely to know where Wen Ho was. Once he died, wouldn't it be equivalent to losing news of Wen Ho? Master Wen, don't worry. I held back in this palm. He won't die, Fan Zhong smiled and said loudly. That's good. Wen Xiang immediately let out a breath of impure air, and his expression became slightly calmer. Button the next moment, the palm energy dissipated. On the ground, Wen Qingjiao's figure was nowhere to be seen. There was only a pool of bright red blood. This. Wen Xiang's pupils shrunk as he stood there in shock. That's impossible. Fan Zhong was also startled, and then he screamed. He had held back his strength. How did Wen Qingjiao still turn into meat paste? He self-destructed. Just as Fan Zhong was in shock, Tang 13 walked over and said in a low voice. Though it was only for a second, his ghost eyes saw it clearly. Wen Qingjiao didn't die from Fan Zhong's slap. Rather, the curse power inside his body exploded and he died. Yes. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He felt it too. It's obvious that the person behind this doesn't want us to get any clues from him. Wen Xiang calmed down a little, but his face was dark. It was obvious that he was suppressing his anger. The enemy was far too arrogant. They planted spies in the Wen clan. It was unclear if Wen Qingjiao had betrayed the clan. Regardless, he had contributed greatly to the Wen clan. To die like this, it was heartbreaking. So after a long time, Wen Xiang exhaled deeply. He turned to Wen Luan, trying to figure out what just happened. Look, there are marks on the ground. Just then, Lan Che realized something. He shrieked and pointed at the pool of blood on the ground. Everyone was first startled. Then, they looked over and saw that under the pool of blood, there were multiple marks. Wen Xiang frowned. He waved his hand and the blood on the ground began to float. At this moment, the marks on the ground were clearly visible to everyone. It was the word for. Everyone stared at the word on the ground, unsure of what it meant. It was obvious that Wen Qingjiao had written these words right before his death, when he had regained his consciousness. Everyone was silent as if they were worried about something. Leader 1, I am guessing that this word represents one person. After some time, Nie Tian spoke first. He said in a low voice, inside the Wen clan, is there anyone related to the word for? Also, someone important to the Wen clan. Wen Xiang's eyes were shaking. After hesitating for a long time, he finally uttered, the fourth elder. Chapter 44:11. When Wen Xiang said the name fourth elder, his face became even more gloomy. His eyes trembled uncontrollably. Anyone could see the waves of shock in his heart. If the four, that Wen Qingjiao wrote before his death really represented the fourth elder of the Wen family, then it undoubtedly meant that the upper echelons of the Wen family had already fallen to the enemy. Second uncle, fourth elder is... Wen Luan was stunned for a long time before he finally reacted. He opened his mouth but did not finish his sentence. Let's go to the Elders' Council. Wen Xiang was silent for a long time before he turned around to go to the Elders' Council. He did not even want to listen to Wen Luan explain what had just happened. Patriarch 1, this is a serious matter. Do not be rash. But at this time, Nie Tian stood up and stopped Wen Xiang. Wen Xiang frowned and looked at Nie Tian to see what the latter had to say. I understand Patriarch Wen's feelings right now. But before the matter is clear, we cannot act rashly. Nie Tian paused and said, I think that there may be more than one spy in the Wen family. Senior Wen Ho could disappear in such a short time. It is not something that could be done by one person. What we need to figure out now is Wen Qingjiao's death. With these words, Nie Tian turned to look at Wen Luan. Wen Luan understood his meaning and said, Grandpa Qingjiao and I left just now. However, he suddenly attacked me halfway. Fortunately, I reacted fast enough, so he didn't succeed. As soon as I reacted, I called out to you. Before he attacked you, you did not sense anything? Nie Tian frowned. After all, Wen Luan was a cultivator with 7 life veins. His perception of danger was far superior to that of an ordinary person. He should have sensed something. I was not paying attention at the time. I was in a hurry, so I did not notice. Wen Luan shook his head with a look of self-blame. Nie Tian frowned and his brain worked quickly as he fell into deep thought. He still could not confirm whether or not Wen Qingjiao had betrayed the Wen family. If Wen Qingjiao had not betrayed the Wen family, then where did the cursed seal in his body come from? If he had betrayed the Wen family, why did he expose himself in advance? Wen Ho was missing. Although Wen Qingjiao was suspected, he was still safe without any evidence. Moreover, he could have easily found an excuse to leave after leaving the secret place. There was no need to attack Wen Luan at all. The matter, what is the truth of love? Nie Tian's heart was in a mess. Lord Beacon Emperor, I feel that all of this is the doing of the Gia sect. At that moment, Fan Zhong, who had been silent all this while, spoke up, causing everyone's expressions to change. What do you know? Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he asked directly. It was obvious that Fan Zhong knew what was going on. Now that things have come to this, I won't hide it anymore. Fan Zhong took a deep breath and said, I've made a deal with the Gia sect before. The Gia sect wants to use this opportunity to subdue the Fengtian Fate sect. Previously, the Gia sect had brought their disciples to provoke them in order to test the Fengtian Fate sect's strength. The Gia sect plans to work with me to take down the Fengtian Fate sect during the selection. The Fengtian Fate sect will become a branch of the Gia sect. I will be the sect master, and there will be no more Beacon Emperor. Moreover, half of the Fengtian Fate sect's sect will be handed over to the Gia sect. Nie Tian frowned slightly with an ugly expression on his face. In fact, he had already guessed the deal between Fan Zhong and the Gia sect, but he didn't expect that the Gia sect would give Fan Zhong such harsh conditions. Not only did they want the Fengtian Fate sect to submit, but they also wanted half of the sect's sect. More, what he didn't expect was that Fan Zhong actually agreed to such conditions. Everyone's expressions were ugly as they looked at Fan Zhong with strange expressions. Fan Zhong, on the other hand, didn't feel anything. He was already following Nie Tian, so everything that happened before was no longer important. Wen Luan, on the other hand, was shocked. He didn't expect the Fengtian Fate sect to come up with such a scheme for the Gia sect. If Nie Tian didn't appear, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Unknowingly, Nie Tian had solved a hidden crisis for the Fengtian Fate sect. When I made a deal with Gia sect, I had a code name, 11. Fan Zhong's gaze swept across the crowd before finally landing on Nie Tian. He said, the person I came into contact with has never revealed his true appearance, but his code name is 4. I call him Mr. 4. 4. When Nie Tian and the others heard this number, their expressions changed. It was obvious that Fan Zhong was implying that the 4 that Wen Qingjiao had written before his death was the Mr. 4 that he had come into contact with. Flag Leader Fan, are you saying that the 4 that Wen Qingjiao wrote down is the same person as the Mr. 4 that you came into contact with? Wen Xiang couldn't help but ask in a deep voice. Yes. Fan Zhong nodded solemnly and said, I've fought with Mr. 4th before, so I know that he's good at using curse seals and has a strange strength. He's a very difficult character to deal with. When Xiang heard Fan Zhong's words, he could not help but sink into contemplation. Such as if the number 4 that Wen Qingjiao wrote was really the person that Fan Zhong had mentioned, it undoubtedly meant that Wen Qingjiao knew this person's identity. In that case, Wen Qingjiao must have betrayed them, just like Fan Zhong. When what Qingjiao's betrayal meant to the Wen family, Wen Xiang was clearer than anyone else. He once upon a time, Wen Qingjiao was the most loyal member of the Wen family. Such as today, even this most loyal person had betrayed the Wen clan. It was impossible to imagine how many more people in the Wen clan had betrayed the Wen clan. One thinking of this, Wen Xiang's expression changed. His body actually trembled a few times and he almost fell. Second uncle. Upon seeing this, Wen Luan hurried forward to support Wen Xiang. Nie Tian frowned, and his expression became very ugly. He also realized the seriousness of the matter. This was definitely not a simple matter of a sect or a clan. Ghost the Cliff sect's secret moves were too big. They wanted to swallow up the Fengtian Fate sect and the Wen family. Fan Zhong, if you were to see this Mr. 4 again, would you be able to recognize him? Nie Tian asked Fan Zhong after a long silence. Fan Zhong's eyes narrowed and he said uncertainly. He did not know Mr. Four very well. He had only met him a few times and fought with him once. According to with his abilities, an ordinary warrior would be able to remember his aura after meeting him once. However, Mr. Four was obviously not an ordinary person, especially since he was proficient in incantations. It was naturally not difficult for him to conceal his aura. When clan leader, we will go to the Elders Guild now. Please gather all the elders of the One clan. Nie Tian nodded slightly, then looked at Wen Xiang and said. Wen Xiang nodded and immediately understood what Nie Tian meant. He said in surprise, Lord Beacon Emperor, you suspect that this Mr. Four is from the One clan? It was obvious that Nie Tian had asked Wen Xiang to gather all the elders of the One clan so that Fan Zhong could see if he could find Mr. Four among them. That's possible. Nie Tian nodded solemnly, and a strange light surged in his eyes. Chapter 44:12. Nie Tian had his own reasons for suspecting that Mr. Fourth was from the One clan. He felt that Wen Ho's sudden disappearance was the doing of the Gia sect. The kidnapping of Wen Ho was very likely done by Mr. Fourth. The person who could easily kidnap Wen Ho from the One clan was most likely the higher-ups of the One clan. Considering the two factors, Mr. Fourth was most likely from the One clan. Wen Xiang brought Nie Tian and the rest out of the hidden place and headed straight for the Elders' Council. After exiting the hidden place, Wen Xiang asked Wen Luan to inform the guards of the One clan to seal off the entire One clan and forbid anyone from entering or leaving. Then, Wen Xiang, Nie Tian, and the rest headed straight for the Elders' Council. Along the way, Nie Tian saw that everything was normal in the One clan, but there was a sense of oppression. Pieces after a while, they arrived at the inner courtyard of the Elders' Council and entered the Elders' Council Hall. Patriarch, did something happen? A gray-robed elder walked out of the hall. He was short but his eyes were sharp. He asked carefully when he saw the imposing manner of Wen Xiang and the rest. He was the fifth elder of the One clan, Wenbu. His ranking in the Elders' Council was not low but his position was not high. He was not talkative and gave off an honest and sincere vibe. Fifth elder, please inform everyone in the Elders' Council that I have something important to discuss with everyone. Wen Xiang did not waste any time and said sternly. All right. Wen Bu knew that something big had happened when he saw Wen Xiang's expression. He did not dare to delay and left to inform the other elders. The One clan was a big clan and the distribution of power was similar to other big clans. There was the clan leader and the Elders' Council. Ping the clan leader was in charge of all the affairs of the clan. However, whenever something big happened, the clan leader could not make the decision and had to seek the Elders' Council's opinion. There were 11 elders in the Elders' Council of the One clan. They were all older martial artists of the One clan. Wen Xiang brought everyone into the hall and arranged for everyone to sit down. Big No One spoke in the hall. The atmosphere was a little tense and everyone was deep in thought. Not after a while, Wen Luan appeared in the hall. Luaner, have you arranged everything? Wen Xiang raised his head and asked when he saw Wen Luan return. Don't worry, second uncle. I've already informed the guards. Not only will the interior of the One Mansion be under strict surveillance, but everything within 10 miles of the One Mansion will also be under control. As long as the person who kidnapped grandfather is still in the One Mansion, he definitely won't be able to escape. Wen Luan's face was full of confidence as he spoke heavily. That's good. Wen Luan's taut face relaxed a little, but he was still worried. After all, some time had passed since Wen Ho disappeared. Could the kidnappers have already left? Very soon, the fifth elder Wen Bu returned. Behind him were 2 elders who were about the same age as him. Their auras were very strong, and it was obvious that they were powerhouses. 5th elder, 7th elder, 8th elder. Wen Xiang looked at the 3 and nodded slightly. Patriarch, what happened? Why did you gather everyone in such a hurry? Even though the eighth elder was old, he still had a fierce face, looking extremely fierce. Moreover, he was an impatient person, asking in a carefree manner. Don't worry, eighth elder. When everyone is here, this patriarch will tell you everything. When Xiang signaled the eighth elder not to worry, and waved his hand, signaling the three elders to sit down. Patriarch, these are. The seventh elder had a tall stature and appeared very steady. His sharp eyes scanned over to Nie Tian and the others. This, after all, this was the elders' hall of the Wen clan, not just anyone could enter. Wen Luan was a direct descendant of the Wen clan, and he might even become the next patriarch of the Wen clan, so it was reasonable for him to be here. However, Nie Tian and the others were obviously outsiders, so how could they enter the Elders' Council's main hall? This is the Beacon Emperor of the Feng Tianming House. This is Flag Leader Fan of the Feng Tianming House, and that is a good friend of the Beacon Emperor. When Xiang nodded slightly and introduced Nie Tian, Fan Zhong, and Tang 13. Beacon Emperor? The seventh elder's gaze locked onto Nie Tian. His shock was written all over his face. He did not think that this young man who looked about the same age as Wen Luan would be the Beacon Emperor of the Feng Tianming House. In reality, he had heard that the Feng Tianming House had found a new Beacon Emperor. However, he did not think that the new Beacon Emperor would be this young. The seventh elder and the eighth elder were stunned as well. They looked at Nie Tian in shock. May I ask why the Beacon Emperor has come to the Wen clan? The seventh elder was the first to react. He bowed to Nie Tian and asked politely. I am here to ask Senior Wen Ho to come out of seclusion. There is some trouble. Nie Tian nodded and said softly. When the seventh elder heard the word trouble, he frowned but didn't ask anything else. Wen Xiang had already said that he would tell everyone everything once everyone was here. Therefore, there was no need to rush. Nie Heaven's gaze swept across the three elders and secretly sensed their auras. He couldn't help but be surprised. The three elders' energy was very strong. They were obviously Sky Martial Divine ancestors. Their strength seemed to be similar to Fan Zhong's. These three people were obviously not the strongest in the Wen clan's Elders Association. There must be stronger people in the Elders Association who had yet to appear. This meant that the Wen alone was stronger than the Fengtian Fate sect. The Wen clan was not the strongest family in the seventh cultivation sacred world. However, they were not weaker than the Feng Tianming House. This showed the decline of the Feng Tianming House. Nie Xiang glanced at Fan Zhong. The latter understood and shook his head. Fan Zhong began to carefully sense the three elders when they entered the hall. Unfortunately, none of them had an energy similar to Mr. Forth's. Then the other elders came to the hall one after another. About half an hour later, 9 elders of the Wen clan appeared in the hall. Unfortunately, Fan Zhong still did not find anyone suspicious. Who else hasn't arrived yet? When Xiang's gaze swept across the group of elders as he asked in a deep voice. Patriarch, the great elder and the fourth elder are not here yet. The second elder bowed and replied carefully. The elders felt that something was wrong with Wen Xiang's mood and frowned. Although Wen Xiang was the patriarch, he knew how to respect the elders. He was usually very respectful to the elders. He had never behaved like this before. Did something big really happen to the Wen clan? Nie Tianze was secretly observing all the elders, but he did not find anything suspicious. Where are the great elder and the fourth elder? Wen Xiang frowned and asked coldly. There was silence in the hall. No one said anything. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy and oppressive. Clan head, what exactly happened? At this moment, the second elder couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and asked. Wen Xiang's face was gloomy. He did not speak. Right at this moment, Nie Tian stood up, swept the crowd with his gaze, and said indifferently, Senior Wen Ho disappeared not long ago. He should have been kidnapped. The moment he said this, everyone's expression changed. They were shocked. Chapter 44:13. In the great hall of the One Clan's Elders' Council, Nye Tian directly revealed the truth about Wen Ho's disappearance, shocking everyone on the spot. Who would have thought something like this would happen to the Wen clan? Strange, no wonder Wen Xiang had summoned the elders so urgently. Everyone couldn't help but look at Wen Xiang. The latter's face was dark and he didn't say anything. Wen Xiang was also surprised that Nye Tian had revealed the truth just like that. But Nye Tian's next words shocked him even more. Both the head of the Wen clan and I suspect that Senior Wen Ho's disappearance was caused by people from the Wen clan. With a calm expression, Nye Tian ran his gaze across the crowd and took in everyone's reactions. Many people's expressions changed as they felt a chill run down their spines. The Wen clan had kidnapped Wen Ho. Didn't this mean there was a traitor in the Wen clan? At this moment, anyone could tell that Nye Tian was testing the crowd to see how they would react. Wen Xiang also understood Nye Tian's meaning, but he didn't feel comfortable saying it out loud. Nye Tian had acted so domineeringly in front of everyone. It was obvious that he was the host. Fan Zhong frowned and sighed inwardly. Nye Tian was still too young. Nye Tian and the others had come to the Wen clan to ask Wen Ho to come out of seclusion. Now that Nye Tian was the host, Wen Xiang couldn't help but suspect that the Fengtian Fate sect was trying to take over the Wen clan. If the Fengtian Fate sect had cooperated with the Wen clan like before, then the Wen clan might consider it. But it was impossible for the Wen clan to become a vassal of the Fengtian Fate sect. The Fengtian Fate sect might not even be stronger than the Wen clan. How could the Wen clan become a vassal of a faction weaker than them? Why? Fan Zhong felt that although Nye Tian's actions were to uncover the mastermind, it would arouse the displeasure of the Wen clan. This would be detrimental to the cooperation between the Fengtian Fate sect and the Wen clan. But Nye Tian wasn't an idiot. How could he not know the pros and cons? But now that things had developed to this point, there was no time for him to think. Nye Tian was not familiar with Wen Xiang, but he could tell that although this Wen clan leader was steady, he lacked the decisiveness to cut a tangled knot with a sharp knife. When it hadn't been long since Ho had been kidnapped, if this dragged on, it would undoubtedly become even more troublesome. Since Wen Xiang was still hesitating, Nye Tian had no choice but to take matters into his own hands. Lord Beacon Emperor, you called us here because you think that one of us is the traitor, right? The eighth elder was a hot-tempered person, but he was not stupid. He immediately understood what Nye Tian meant, so he stood up and asked. The rest of the people looked at the eighth elder with a dark expression. Nye Tian, an outsider, came to the Wen mansion. What right did he have to interrogate the elders of the Wen family? Just like that. So what if you're the Beacon Emperor of the Fengtian Ming sect? The Wen clan has no reason to be manipulated by you. Fan Zhong's frown deepened when he saw this, and he couldn't help but feel nervous. As expected, Nye Tian's actions had aroused the disgust of the Wen family. These people appeared to be polite, but it didn't mean that they were afraid of Nye Tian. That's right. Nye Tian looked at the eighth elder, but he didn't show the slightest fear, nor did he try to hide anything. Just now, Clanmaster Wen showed me the place where Senior Wen Ho practices secluded cultivation. It's in the Wen clan's secret area. I'm sure everyone here knows better than me what the Wen clan's secret place is. Since the traitor was able to kidnap Senior Ho from the secret place, it means that he must be a high-ranking member of the Wen clan and can enter and exit the secret place at will. I see. The other elders' expressions changed drastically when they heard what Nye Tian had said. They were extremely shocked. Wen Ho was in isolation in the Wen clan's secret place and was kidnapped. How could this be? Then may I ask, Lord Beacon Emperor, have you found the traitor? Eighth elder's eyes darkened as he continued to ask. Not yet. Nye Tian stood up and slowly swept his gaze across all the elders. He said, For now, it seems that the traitor is not one of you. How can you be sure? The third elder stood up and asked coldly with a gloomy expression. Even though Nye Tian's intention was to find the traitor, he looked down on the One clan by looking at them so directly. But plus, Wen Ho's disappearance was the One clan's business. Since when was it Nye Tian's turn to criticize them? You aren't powerful enough, Nye Tian said as he glanced at the crowd again. No. The reason why he ruled out the elders was because he felt that they weren't powerful enough. Although these elders were all sky martial divine ancestors, their auras were not as strong as Fan Zhong's. Then the mysterious Mr. Four should be more powerful than Fan Zhong. Dong, however, this was only Nye Tian's initial judgment. He couldn't rule out the people in front of him. You. Third elder's face darkened. He didn't expect Nye Tian to be so direct. He was so angry that he couldn't speak. Nye Tian ignored him and turned to Wen Xiang. He nodded and said, Master Wen, I think the traitor is an elder who isn't here. First elder and fourth elder. Wen Xiang frowned and his heart trembled. One of the 11 elders, only first elder and fourth elder weren't here. To be exact, fourth elder was more suspicious than first elder. After all, Wen Qingjiao had written 4 before he died. This 4 didn't mean fourth elder or Mr. 4. However, the fourth elder's strength seemed to be too weak. But if it was first elder, the One clan would be in big trouble. Are you talking about the great elder? The eighth elder asked in a deep voice. Nye Tian said that they weren't powerful enough, and first elder was the most powerful person in the elders' council. To fourth elder's strength wasn't much different from the other elders. From the look of it, the grand elder is the prime suspect, Nye Tian said without the slightest hesitation. Where did this ignorant brat come from, to dare doubt this seat? Just as the sound of his voice faded, a deep voice rang out. Immediately after, a tall and sturdy silhouette descended from the sky. A terrifying aura gushed forth, instantly filling the entire hall with a sense of oppression. Nye Tian's expression changed as he sensed the pressure pressing down on him. This aura was far more powerful than Fan Zhong's. Nye Tian raised his head slightly and saw an old man with short, white hair that looked like needles walking towards him. His eyes shone with a fierce light, and his aura was vast and mighty. Grand Elder! When the group of elders saw who it was, they all stood up, eyes trembling, and cried out in alarm. He's the Grand Elder! Nye Tian's expression darkened as he was greatly surprised. He didn't expect First Elder of the One clan to be so powerful. He was comparable to the experts at the peak of the Tian Qi realm. In fact, under the Great Elder's aura, Wen Xiang seemed to be extremely weak. I'm afraid this person is no weaker than Ling Shuang Wuchen, Nye Tian thought to himself. At this moment, the Grand Elder's eyes were fixed on Nye Tian, his anger soaring to the heavens. Chapter 44:14. Omega 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 choking with sobs. Novel. In the great hall of the One clan's Elders' Council, the Great Elder appeared in a domineering manner, shocking everyone present. Nye Tian noticed Wen Xiang's embarrassed expression and couldn't help but frown. Look, it could be seen that Wen Xiang was very afraid of the Great Elder. I heard that this person was as famous as Wen Ho, and his strength back then was not any weaker than Wen Ho. Looks like it's true. Fan Zhong looked at the Great Elder of the One clan and was secretly shocked. This was the first time he had seen the person in front of him, but he had long heard of the Great Elder's name. Dang, in the beginning, when Fan Zhong was still young, the Wen family was already a great family in the 7 cultivators of true virtue sacred world. The former patriarch of the Wen family, Wen Ho, and the Great Elder of the Wen family, Wen Qingmu, were known as the 2 heroes of the Wen family. They were outstanding figures among the younger generation of the 7 cultivators of true virtue sacred world. Only later on, Wen Ho chose to join the Feng Tianming sect while Wen Qingmu stayed with the Wen family. Rumor has it that Wen Ho and Wen Qingmu once had a battle for the position of patriarch. In the end, Wen Ho borrowed the power of the Feng Tian Fate sect to become the patriarch. However, with the passage of time, the Feng Tian Fate sect declined and Marquis Wen's lifeline was crippled. On the contrary, the Loki Wenqingmu's status in the Wen clan grew higher and higher. If the rumor about the struggle for the position of patriarch is true, then Wenqingmu must have accumulated a lot of resentment in his heart. Fan Zhong secretly sensed Wenqingmu's aura, but he did not sense anything unusual. The latter's aura was completely different from Mr. Forth's. But however, Wenqingmu made Fan Zhong have another suspicion. Perhaps Wenqingmu was the same as him, someone who had dealings with Gia sect. If the Gia sect could promise Fan Zhong to be the sect leader of the Feng Tianming sect, they could also promise Wenqingmu the same thing and make him the Wen clan leader. Although Wenqingmu was already the grand elder of the Wen family, his position was not much different from that of the clan leader. However, an elder was only an elder after all. Even if he was the grand elder, he was only an elder. The position of clan leader was still very attractive to him. As he thought of this, Fan Zhong's nerves couldn't help but tense up. He was worried that Wenqingmu would harm Nie Tian. "So you're the great elder of the Wen clan, I apologize for my lack of manners." At this moment, Nie Tian stood up without fear and said with a smile. Wen Greenwood was burly and was 2 meters tall, but he was very skinny. His robe fluttered in the wind as he stared at Nie Tian cold and said, "Young man, you are the Beacon Sky King, your status is prestigious. However, this is the Wen Mansion. It is not the place for an outsider to interfere in the Wen Mansion's affairs." Feeling Wenqingmu's oppressive aura, his gaze involuntarily trembled, and his heart rose to his throat. He didn't expect Wenqingmu to be so domineering, completely disregarding Nie Tian's identity. According to Nie Tian's performance in the Feng Tian Fate sect, he was also a very powerful person. Hiruntu, if the two of them were to clash, it would be very difficult to control the situation. When Xiang and Wen Luan wore awkward expressions. They wanted to say something, but they didn't know what to say. Nie Tian looked at Wenqingmu. After a long time, he laughed and unexpectedly nodded. He said, "Senior is right. Junior was rash." Saying so, he walked out and stood to the side. Upon seeing this, everyone's expressions flickered as they looked at Nie Tian in astonishment. For the great Beacon Emperor to bow down like this undoubtedly required a bit of magnanimity. It was true that Nie Tian was in the wrong for interfering with the Wen clan's matters. But he was the Beacon Emperor of the Feng Tian Fate sect, and this matter was related to the 4 Tribulation Flag Master of the Feng Tian Fate sect. It was fine for him to use this reason to interfere. Wenqingmu was powerful, but Nie Tian could use his identity to confront him head-on. No matter how powerful Wenqingmu was, he couldn't kill Nie Tian in front of everyone. Wen Xiang wouldn't let this happen either. Only if this was the case, the Wen clan and the Feng Tian Fate sect would become enemies. For in order to prevent the relationship between the Wen and the Feng Tian Fate sect from going too far, Nie Tian had to take a step back. This step didn't mean that he was afraid, it was for the future of the Feng Tian Fate sect. "Beacon Emperor, it has been hard on you." Fan Zhong was smart and understood everything. He sighed inwardly. With Nie Tian's temperament, he wouldn't give in so easily. However, Nie Tian took a step back for the sake of the Heaven Beacon sect. What a Beacon Emperor! He knows when to advance and when to retreat. Wenqingmu hadn't expected that Nie Tian would actually choose to concede. The young man in front of him was more formidable than he had imagined. He laughed heartily and said in a clear voice, "If that's the case, then it seems like I'm being petty." Nie Tian's eyes darkened. He nodded with a smile and didn't say anything else. Wenqingmu also nodded his head. He was angry not because he wanted to kill Nie Tian, but because Nie Tian was too presumptuous and had decided the Wen clan's matters on his own. Then, he looked at Wen Xiang and said, "Patriarch, this seat already knows the whole matter. I don't want to explain anything, but you should be very clear that I'm not a traitor." "Yes." Wen Xiang nodded and swept his gaze across the crowd. I believe everyone knows the first elder's position in the Wen clan better than me. If he wanted to be the patriarch, Wen Xiang wouldn't have had the chance. The others had ugly expressions, but they couldn't say anything. Perhaps others might not know, but the members of the Wen clan were well aware that although Wen Qingmu was only the first elder, his status and reputation were much higher than Wen Xiang's, the clan leaders. Ever since Wen Ho was injured and went into seclusion, Wen Qingmu had the highest status in the entire Wen clan. Indeed, even the rumor that Wen Ho and Wen Qingmu were fighting for the patriarch position was not true. All the elders knew that Wen Qingmu and Wen Ho did fight for the patriarch position, but Wen Qingmu backed out not because of the Heaven Beacon sect's pressure, but because he chose to back out. After Wen Ho was injured, everyone in the Wen clan agreed for Wen Qingmu to be the patriarch. It was Wen Qingmu who stood his ground and pushed Wen Xiang to the position. Slight. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Wen Xiang wouldn't be the patriarch if they didn't ask clearly. How could such a person be a traitor? If Wen Qingmu was a traitor, then the Wen clan was finished. Wen Qingmu nodded his head, but his expression was extremely ugly. His gaze swept across the crowd, and after a long time, he finally spoke, "Everyone, there is indeed a traitor in the Wen clan. However, this traitor has been taken down by me." Taken down? Everyone was shocked, then their expressions changed. They were all wondering who the traitor was. "Great Elder, who is the traitor?" Wen Xiang paused for a moment. He had already noticed that Wen Qingmu's expression was strange, but he still asked. "Fourth brother, come in." Wen Qingmu's eyes were tightly shut as he spoke in a deep voice. Following as soon as he finished speaking, a short old man walked into the hall. He looked flustered as he looked at the crowd in panic. "Fourth elder." Wen Xiang and the group of elders cried out in surprise when they saw the person who had just arrived. The fourth elder that Qingmu had mentioned was none other than the fourth elder of the Wen clan, Wen Qingchen. Baidu Search 881 Chinese Network Yin. Chapter 44:15. In the great hall of the Wen clan elders, everyone was stunned when they saw that the person who had appeared was the fourth elder, Wen Qingchen. Difficult, so the traitor that great elder Wen Qingmu mentioned was Wen Qingchen? Everyone knew that the first elder, Wen Qingmu, and the fourth elder, Wen Qingchen, were blood-related brothers. Furthermore, the two of them had a very good relationship, much closer than ordinary brothers. But looking at the current situation, it seemed that Wen Qingchen had betrayed the Wen family, and Wen Qingmu had personally captured him. Wen Qingchen looked at the crowd with a panicked expression, clearly very nervous. Heaven frowned. Wen Qingchen's reaction was definitely not that of Mr. Fourth. Since Mr. Fourth could make Fan Zhong so afraid, he must be very strong. Even if he had been captured, he shouldn't have lost his composure like this. "Wen Qingchen, tell me what you have done." Wen Qingmu's eyes darkened as he stared at Wen Qingchen coldly. Yes. Wen Qingchen nodded repeatedly, his face full of fear as he began to confess. According to Wen Qingchen, he had been bribed by the Gia sect a long time ago. He had been lurking in the Wen family, helping the Gia sect to gather information about the Wen family. Ever since Wen Ho was injured, the Wen clan's influence had gradually weakened, and their strength had been declining day by day. The Gia sect had tried to rope in the Wen family several times, but to no avail. Therefore, he could only bribe the members of the Wen clan in an attempt to disintegrate the Wen clan from within. Originally, the Gia sect did not want to deal with the Wen family prematurely. However, Nie Tian's visit had hastened the Gia sect's pace. Ghost the Cliff sect could not win over the Wen family, but they could accept their neutrality. However, if the Wen clan were to side with the Feng Tian Fate School, then the Wen clan would not be allowed to exist. Therefore, the Gia sect secretly ordered Wen Qingchen to kidnap Marquis Wen. Wen Qingchen and the members of the Gia sect secretly cooperated and kidnapped Wen Ho from the Wen family's secret land. After that, Wen Qingchen's face was filled with fear. He looked at Wen Xiang and said, "Master, I have sinned and deserve to die. But please, on account of the many years I have served the Wen clan, spare me this time." Xiang's face was gloomy as he asked coldly, "Where is my father?" They've been taken away by the Gia sect." Wen Qingchen could feel Wen Xiang's anger, and his tongue rolled up and down. "It was you who brought the people from Gia sect into the secret place, wasn't it?" The coldness in Wen Xiang's eyes deepened, and his eyes turned dark red. Wen Qingchen immediately sensed the killing intent and turned to look at Wen Qingmu. The latter's face was cold. When helpless, Qingchen could only nod. "Damn it!" Wen Xiang growled. He stood up and shouted, "How did they get out of the Wen mansion?" I brought him out." Wen Qingchen's voice was already trembling as he glanced at Wen Qingmu. "You!" Wen Xiang was so angry that his face turned green and he was speechless. He did not expect Wen Qingchen to be so despicable that he had become a lackey of the Gia sect. One the elders couldn't bear to watch any longer and started reprimanding him. "Fourth elder has crossed the line. How dare he side with the Gia sect? The Gia sect has wild ambitions. They have been eyeing the Wen clan for a long time. Wen Qingchen is willing to be their lackey. How shameless!" "Wen Qingchen, do you remember your surname? All these years, has the Wen clan ever mistreated you?" Everyone chimed in, as if they wanted to skin Wen Qingchen alive. Wen Qingchen lowered his head and didn't speak. Wen Xiang frowned and looked up at Wen Qingmu. No matter what, Wen Qingchen was Wen Qingmu's younger brother. Was he really going to kill Wen Qingchen? Wen Qingmu's eyes were tightly shut and his face was downcast. He looked like he was in great pain. No, something is wrong with his aura. Just then, Tang 13 seemed to have sensed something and exclaimed in surprise. What did he see? Nie Tian's expression changed as he asked. Tang 13's ghost eyes were extraordinary and could see things that normal people couldn't. Curse. Tang 13's eyes widened as she yelled out the two words. Boom. At the instant he finished speaking, a terrifying aura shot into the sky. In an instant, the vast and mighty power of the curse erupted. It filled the entire hall in an instant. Nie Tian's expression flickered as he turned pale with fright. Wen Xiang, Wen Luan, and the others reacted as well. They had seen Wen Qingjiao's curse explode. What was happening to Wen Qingchen was exactly the same as what happened to Wen Qingjiao. Boom. Then, Wen Qingchen leaped into the air and slammed his palm towards Elder 8, who was the closest to him. Traitor, how dare you be so arrogant? Elder 8's temperament was violent and he didn't care about anything else. He roared and slammed his palm down. Waves of energy rushed out like a flood. Bang! In the next second there was a muffled explosion. Elder 8's body trembled and he was flung backwards. When he landed on the ground, he left a long trail of blood on the ground. Eighth brother! When the other elders saw this, their expressions changed greatly and they cried out in alarm. Wen Qingchen's strength was about the same as Elder 8's. How could he injure Elder 8 in one move? Everyone be careful, the curse mark in his body can increase his power. Wen Xiang's expression is cold and solemn as he loudly shouted. So it was the power of the curse. Everyone understood and stepped back. Wen Xiang's eyes were cold. He took a step forward and was about to take action himself. Nie Tian retreated to the side and locked his gaze on Great Elder Wen Qingmu. Although Xiang was strong, he didn't stand a chance against Wen Qingchen in his curse state. On the other hand, Wen Qingmu's aura was as vigorous as the sea. He was obviously stronger than Wen Xiang. How dare you be so arrogant? As expected, Wen Qingmu shouted in a low voice and slapped his palm forward. Instantly, strands of vast and mighty energy swept out and actually forced Wen Qingchen to retreat repeatedly. However, Wen Qingchen had lost his consciousness under the influence of the curse. His eyes were bloodshot and he roared as he pounced on Wen Qingmu. Courting death. Wen Qingmu's eyes darkened and a murderous glint flashed across his eyes. He waved his hand in the air and endless energy surged out, turning into a giant green hand that locked Wenqinchin in place. Roar! Wenqinchin showed no fear even though he was trapped. Instead, the murderous intent in his eyes intensified as he roared like a ferocious beast. The other elders panicked when they saw this. What happened to Wenqinchin? Why did he suddenly become like a beast? It should be the curse power in his body. Not only did it increase his power, it also caused his soul to go out of control. The despicable Gia sect actually used such a sinister method. I'm sorry, Qinchin. Right at this moment, when Qingmu's gaze trembled, and he spoke gloomily. His hand suddenly exerted force, and the enormous green hand tightened. Under the terrifying force, it actually intended to directly crush Wenqingmu to death. It's when the others saw this, their eyes couldn't help but tremble. Wenqinchin was Wenqingmu's younger brother. Was Wenqingmu really going to kill him? Big brother. At the moment of life and death, Wenqinchin's soul had a moment of clarity. His eyes trembled and he seemed to have used all his strength to shout out these two words. But it was already too late. Wenqingmu clenched his fist and the sound of blood exploding could be heard in the air. In a flash of blood, Wenqinchin's body was destroyed. Chapter 44:16. There was dead silence in the hall. All eyes were fixed on Great Elder Wenqingmu. They were shocked and stunned. No one had expected that Wenqingmu would actually kill Wenqinchin with his own hands. Taiwan Xiang stood rooted to the ground and could not react for a long time. Just now he was still hesitating on how to deal with Wenqinchin. Wenqinchin had betrayed the Wen clan and helped an outsider. It was a heinous crime, but he was still Wenqingmu's younger brother. If Wenqingmu wanted to protect him, most of the elders would be inclined to spare his life. But now, Wenqinchin had been killed by Wenqingmu. This was a scene that no one had expected. Great Elder Yu. It took a long time for everyone to react. Several elders looked at Wenqingmu, their lips trembling, but they did not know what to say. Wenqinchin colluded with outsiders to harm the Wen clan. He deserves to die, Wenqingmu said solemnly. But his trembling eyes showed that he was extremely heartbroken. Wenxiang's eyes narrowed. He was speechless. Nie Tian's reaction was normal. Although he did not expect Wenqingmu to be so ruthless, he saw another possibility in Wenqingmu's eyes. Perhaps this was not a righteous act, but a murder to silence a witness. Of course, this was only his guess, and he could not say it out loud. Nie Tian could tell that Wenqingmu was far more important to the Wen clan than Wenxiang, the clan leader. Just as Wenqingmu had said, without him, Wenxiang would not have become the clan leader. Then was that so? Doubts arose. If Wenqingmu did not care about the clan leader's position, what did he care about? If he was really killing Wenqingmu, it would mean that he had betrayed the Wen clan. What did Gia sect offer Wenqingmu to make him betray them? At the same time, Nie Tian was shocked by Great Elder's strength. He could easily defeat Fourth Elder, who was under the influence of the curse seals. After a while, the hall fell silent. Great Elder, the people of Gia sect have captured my father. What should we do? Wenxiang's eyes darkened as he looked at Wenqingmu and asked. Judging from the current situation, Wenho's capture by the Gia sect was a foregone conclusion. What should the Wen family do next? Wenqingmu furrowed his brows and swept his gaze across the other elders as he asked, How do you think we should handle this matter? All the elders lowered their heads and no one said a word. Damn it! Wenxiang already knew the result when he saw this scene. Win Greenwood did not directly reply, instead throwing the question to the others. His meaning was clear. He did not want to save Wenho. The hall was silent, and the atmosphere was stifling. The previous clan leader has been captured. This is a blatant provocation to the Wen clan. I think we should kill our way to the Gia sect and rescue the previous clan leader. In the end, it was the 8th elder, who had the worst temper, who spoke first despite his injuries. 8th elder's temperament was impulsive and extremely hot-blooded. He spoke the words in his heart. However, when he finished speaking, the others remained silent. No one responded. What? Don't you want to save him? Eighth Elder's face darkened as he asked in a cold tone. Eighth Elder, of course we want to save him. However, the problem is, with the current One clan, how are we going to fight against the Gia sect? The second elder stood up and sighed. Wen Xiang's gaze swept across the second elder as his face darkened. He knew that the second elder was the great elder's most loyal supporter. What he had said was equivalent to saying on behalf of the great elder. Second elder, what do you mean by that? Are you saying that just because the One clan is weak, we're not going to save the previous clan leader? Wen Luan shouted angrily as he stepped forward. The great elder frowned and glared at Wen Luan. Wen Luan, step down. Wen Xiang shouted in a cold tone. He did not want to see Wen Luan provoke Wen Qingmu. If Wen Luan wanted to control the Wen clan in the future, he would need Wen Qingmu's support. Second uncle. Wen Luan's face was full of unwillingness as he did not think that he was wrong. This is a family matter. It's not up to a junior like you to comment on it. Wen Xiang frowned and looked angry. Wen Luan frowned. Even though he was unwilling, he still stepped down. Since the previous clan leader was captured, we naturally have to save him. However, you know the current situation of the One clan. If we really want to fight against the Gia sect, it's no different from hitting a rock with an egg. I think that if the previous clan leader was here, he wouldn't want to see such a scene. Wen Qingmu let out a long sigh and said earnestly, I think that this matter needs to be considered at length. May I ask, Great Elder, what further consideration do you have? Wen Xiang was obviously a little angry. After all, the one who was kidnapped was his father. Wen Qingmu frowned and said, the Gia sect kidnapped the previous clan leader instead of killing him. This means that there's still room for negotiation. I'm willing to personally go to the Gia sect and see what the Gia sect is up to. Wen Xiang was stunned. He didn't expect Wen Qingmu to say that. But, as soon as Wen Qingmu's words fell, the scene became chaotic. Great Elder, the Gia sect has the ambition of wolves. It's too dangerous for you to go alone. Yes. Since the Gia sect dared to harm the previous clan leader, of course, they would dare to do it to you. First Elder's action is akin to charging into a dragon's lair alone. You should reconsider before acting. Everyone said that they didn't agree with Wen Qingmu's suggestion. I've already made up my mind, so there's no need for all of you to say anything. Wen Qingmu had a calm expression as he nodded and spoke. The others were stunned and speechless. Wen Xiang's expression was a little awkward. He didn't know what to say. He was indeed a little angry just now. However, Wen Qingmu's action made him feel embarrassed. Family head, that's all for now. I'll set off now. Wen Qingmu looked at Wen Xiang with a resolute expression. If Wen Xiang continued to persuade him, it would be too fake. He didn't say anything else and bowed slightly. Wen Qingmu nodded and turned to leave. Everyone looked at the back of the figure outside the hall. Their faces were a little ugly, and their hearts were sour and sweet. Elders, let's disperse first. Wen Xiang's gaze swept across the crowd as he spoke. Then, he took the lead and left the hall. Nie Tian, Wen Luan and the others also followed Wen Xiang out of the hall. On the way, Wen Luan could not help but ask, Second uncle, do you think that the Grand Elder will be able to save Grandfather? Wen Xiang let out a long sigh, not saying anything. Patriarch 1, don't you have any suspicions that the Grand Elder killed the Fourth Elder? At this moment, Nie Tian finally voiced out his doubts. Beacon Emperor, what do you mean by that? Wen Xiang's face darkened. He was disgusted. I just asked casually. Nie Tian saw that Wen Xiang had such a big reaction, so he forced a smile and covered it up. Wen Luan naturally understood the meaning behind Nie Tian's words. His complexion was also very unsightly. Clearly, he trusted Wen Qingmu very much. I want to pay a visit to the Wind Demon's clan. If you have time, accompany me. The crowd continued to walk. Suddenly, Nye Tian looked at Wenluan and said, Chapter 44:17. Visit the Wind Demons? Wenluan was stunned. He did not expect Nye Tian to visit the Wind Demons clan at this time. Sir Beacon Emperor, if you wish to visit the Wind Demons clan, please go ahead. Wenluan still has something to do, so he can't accompany you, Wen Xiang said cold with a dark expression. Very obviously, Nye Tian's visit to the Wind Demons clan had aroused Wen Xiang's disgust. Wenluan's face stiffened, feeling a little awkward. Nye Tianze didn't mind. Instead, he laughed and said, Master Wen, I did visit the Wind Demons clan to rope them in. And I heard that the Wind Demons clan and the Gia sect are very close. Maybe they know something. Of course, he understood why Wen Xiang was angry. Nye Tian gang had come to rope in the Wen family, but Wen Ho had disappeared. At this time, Nye Tian was going to visit the Wind Demons clan, obviously to rope them in. Such as this behavior was indeed a little inappropriate. Wen Xiang must be thinking, You, Beacon Emperor, think that my Wen family is no good, so you're trying to rope in the Wind Demons clan. You're changing your face too quickly. Nye Tian understood Wen Xiang's feelings, but he didn't want to explain anything. Wen Xiang's face was gloomy. He glanced at Nye Tian and then said to Wenluan, See me later. With that, he turned around and left. Beacon Emperor, grandfather is missing and second uncle is in a bad mood. Please don't take it to heart. Wenluan was a bit embarrassed as he explained for Wen Xiang. I understand. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, Why don't you go find Clan Master Wen first? I'll wait for you at the gate of the Wen mansion. Whether you can accompany me to visit Wind Ghost or not, you'll have to come find me. Yes. Wenluan agreed and turned to look for Wen Xiang. It was true that they were from the Wen clan, but they were also disciples of the Feng Tianming sect. It was difficult to be stuck in the middle. Nye Tian, Fan Zhong, and the others quickly arrived at the entrance of the Wen residence. They did not leave immediately. Instead, they waited for Wenluan. Sir Beacon Emperor, do you really think that Wen Qingmu is suspicious? Fan Zhong asked Nye Tian softly when he saw that there was no one around. I don't know much about this person, but I always feel that his action of placing righteousness before family is a little strange. Nye Tian nodded and said truthfully. From when Wen Qingmu appeared in the lobby, Nye Tian felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. Judging from everyone's reaction, Wen Qingmu and Wen Qingchen's relationship should be very good, and Wen Xiang's dilemma further proved this point. The scene of Wen Qingmu killing Wen Qingchen shocked everyone. Clearly, they did not expect Wen Qingmu to be able to do it. Normally, even brothers who weren't that close wouldn't do such a thing. Moreover, Wen Qingchen would not die. As long as Wen Qingmu spoke, Wen Qingchen could at least live. What made Nye Tian feel strange was that apart from fear, Wen Qingchen's eyes before he died were filled with doubt. That expression seemed to be asking, How dare you kill me? But judging from Wen Qingmu's aura, he shouldn't be Mr. Fourth. Plus, his position in the Wen family is so high, and he has no interest in the family leader position. I really can't think of a reason for him to betray the Wen family. Fan Zhong shook his head, clearly thinking the same thing as Nye Tian. It's also strange that Wen Qingmu chose to go to Gia sect alone. Just then, Tang 13 spoke up. I observed him carefully. He was very calm and confident, as if he had a card up his sleeve. He must be very sure that there would be no danger in going to Gia sect. Nye Tian nodded. He had sensed it as well. If Nye Tian was the only one suspicious, or perhaps he was too suspicious. Now that all three of them suspected Wen Qingmu, it meant that there was something wrong with him. But yes, these were all their guesses. Without any evidence, they couldn't even say it out loud. Wen Qingmu's position in the Wen family was too high, there was no doubt about it. After a while, Wenluan's figure appeared. What do you think? Can you come with me? Nye Tian asked with a faint smile. Wenluan nodded with a smile. Second uncle agreed to let me go. He also asked me to bring a letter to clan leader Fong. Oh. Nye Tian smiled, thinking that this letter was most likely a letter asking for help. He had heard before that the Wen family and the Wind Demon's clan had a good relationship. They could be considered family friends. Let's go. Wen Luan nodded with a smile. Lan Qing and Lan Che followed closely behind him. They relied on him and protected him at the same time. The Wind Demon's clan was different from normal aristocratic families. They lived in a place called Wind Ghost Valley, located in a mountain range. Wen Luan, I heard that the Wen family and the Wind Demon's clan are family friends. Is that true? Nye Tian asked on the way. Yes. Wen Luan nodded and said, a long time ago, the ancestors of the Wen family and the Wind Demon's clan were very good friends. The two ancestors even made an agreement that the Wen family and the Wind Demon's clan would rise or fall together. It's just that this agreement was too old. As it was passed down from generation to generation, the binding force of the agreement became weaker and weaker. Especially a few generations ago, the relationship between the Wen family and the Wind Demon's clan was almost broken. Broken? Why? Nye Tian frowned and asked in surprise. Generally speaking, aristocratic families attached great importance to friendship. After all, this kind of friendship between families was very rare. If both sides had someone to rely on, the family would be able to pass on better. Sir Beacon Emperor might not know, but the Wen family and the Wind Demon's clan were originally hidden families, almost completely isolated from the world. Wen Luan sighed and continued, but about 1,000,000 years ago, a traitor appeared in the Wen family. He left the family and went on a killing spree in the 7 cultivators' sacred world, causing everyone to panic. At that time, the head of the Wen family had no choice but to send 3 elders to capture the traitor. However, he did not expect the traitor to be so strong that he killed all 3 elders. The head of the Wen family was furious and decided to personally capture the traitor. However, the head of the Wen family did not have full confidence, so he asked the head of the Wind Demon's clan for help. Unexpectedly, the head of the Wind Demon's clan refused. The head of the Wen family was very angry, but he had no choice but to capture the traitor alone. However, he was injured by the traitor instead. Later on, the sect master of the Fire Heaven Fate sect took action and finally killed the traitor. In order to repay the kindness, the head of the Wen family decided to lead the family into the world. Thus, the alliance between the Fire Heaven Fate sect and the Wen family was formed. Hearing this, Tian Tian could not help but nod. He did not expect that a traitor would appear in the Wen family, ultimately causing the Wen family to enter the world. Next, Nye Tian frowned and asked Wen Luan, what about the Wind Demon's clan? Why did they also enter the world? I don't know about this. Wen Luan shook his head and said, the Wind Demon's clan entered the world a bit later than the Wen family, but not by too much. In fact, in the past, many disciples of the Wind Demon's clan also joined the Fire Heaven Fate sect. However, for some unknown reason, all the people of the Wind Demon's clan withdrew from the Fire Heaven Fate sect. In the recent tens of thousands of years, with the rise of the Gia sect, the Wind Demon's clan began to get closer to the Gia sect. Second uncle did not want to alienate the relationship with the Wind Demon's clan, so he betrothed big sister to the genius of the Wind Demon's clan, Fong Kuan. The two clans used marriage as a way to maintain their relationship. Wen Luan couldn't help but sigh at this point. In fact, he did not approve of this method, especially when the Wen family was in a weak state. Chapter 44:18. After Wen Luan finished speaking, his expression was somewhat dejected. The so-called marriage alliance looked glamorous on the surface, but in reality, it was just swallowing humiliation. At least from Wen Luan's point of view, the Wen clan's action was inappropriate. To a certain extent, it was a show of weakness and humility. I didn't expect the Wen clan and the Wind Demon's clan to have such a thing. Nye Tian could feel Wen Luan's mood. He frowned slightly and asked, how is the relationship between the Wen and Fong clans now? Even if there was a marriage alliance, the relationship between the two clans should be much better. However, Wenluan shook his head and smiled bitterly. In recent years, the Wen clan's reputation has been getting weaker and weaker, while the Wind Demon's clan has been getting stronger and stronger. Although Big Sister and Feng Kuan are engaged, the Feng clan has never come to propose. I'm afraid that they are already thinking of a way to break off the engagement. Nie Tian's expression became somewhat ugly. The situation that the Wen clan was facing was much more difficult than he had expected. Wenlun glanced at Nie Tian and added, "Actually, Big Sister doesn't like that Feng Kuan either. Although he is very talented, he is sinister and arrogant. He is definitely not a good person." "Yes, I has also heard of the name Feng Kuan. He should be one of the strongest among the younger generation of the seventh cultivator of true virtue." Fan Zhong also opened his mouth and said in a heavy tone, "I heard that Feng Kuan used to be a disciple of the Gia sect. However, he had a conflict with his fellow disciples and killed many of them. The Gia sect had no choice but to let Feng Kuan return to their clan." When Fan Zhong mentioned this matter, Wenluan's expression changed slightly. He seemed to be a little nervous. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "I heard that the Gia sect has already extended an invitation to Feng Kuan. As long as Feng Kuan is willing to join the Gia sect, he will immediately become an inner court elder." "Inner court elder?" Fan Zhong's eyes trembled. He seemed a little surprised, but after thinking about it, he smiled and said, "The Gia sect is really generous. There are only a dozen inner court elders in the sect, and they are all powerhouses of the older generation who have made great contributions to the sect. I didn't expect that they would actually be willing to give Feng Kuan an inner court elder. However, I feel that the position of an inner court elder might not be able to tempt Feng Kuan. An inner elder of the Gia sect might have a high status, but it was only comparable to a protector of the Feng Tianming sect. Since Feng Kuan was already an outstanding figure of the Seven Cultivators' sacred world and the #1 genius of the Wind Ghost clan, the position of patriarch of the Feng clan was already within his grasp. Naturally, he would not be tempted by an inner elder. Not even the position of an inner sect elder can move him? Wenluan couldn't help being shocked. He had thought that once the Gia sect laid out the conditions, Feng Kuan would agree immediately. It seemed like he had underestimated Feng Kuan. "You're underestimating Feng Kuan. I guessed that his strength isn't any weaker than the inner court elders of Gia sect." Fan Zhong glanced at Wenluan and smiled bitterly. "Is he that strong?" Wenluan was stunned once again, his face filled with shock. Wind Kuan's age was similar to his, but his strength was actually catching up to the older generation's powerhouses? After hearing what Flag Master Fan said, I really want to meet this person. Nie Tian smiled, and there was some anticipation in his eyes. Fan He nodded his head and smiled, thinking to himself that maybe the Beacon Emperor could fight Feng Kuan to a draw. Half a day later, under Wenluan's lead, Nie Tian and the others arrived at the Wind Ghost Valley where the Wind Demon's clan resided. Mass standing at the foot of the peak and looking down at the Wind Ghost Valley, one could see many spacious residences in the forest of peaks in the distance. This at first glance, the Wind Demon's clan didn't look like a clan, but more like a sect. Long, long ago, the Wind Demon's clan was very famous in the All-Heaven Saints world. They were even one of the 10 great clans. Only later on, when the power of their bloodline weakened, the strength of their clan also weakened. Thus, they came to the sacred world of 7th cultivators and became a hidden clan. "Let's go." Wenluan nodded and led the way. A moment later, everyone arrived at the entrance of the Wind Ghost Valley. As soon as they landed, more than a dozen black-clothed cultivators appeared and directly surrounded them. "Who are you?" The leading black-clothed cultivator shouted in a cold tone. "I am Wenluan from the Wen clan, and this is the Beacon King from the Beacon Heaven Fate School. We are here to visit Chief Feng, please pass on the message." Wenluan signaled for everyone to not act recklessly before stepping forward. The leading black-clothed cultivator responded in a cold tone. He then asked another black-clothed cultivator to return to the valley and report. However, before the black-clothed cultivator could move, a powerful voice came from the valley. Sir Beacon Emperor has personally come to the Wind Ghost Valley. Please forgive me for not being able to personally welcome you. The voice was like a great bell, and it carried a surging momentum as it fell into everyone's ears. You are too polite. Nye Tian did not know the identity of the person who spoke, so he could not address him casually. He could only respond with a faint smile. Sir Beacon Emperor, I is at the Nine-Wind platform. Please enter the valley. The powerful voice sounded again, and then disappeared like a gust of wind. Sir Beacon Emperor, please. The black-clothed cultivators in front of him finally understood that Nye Tian's identity was not to be trifled with. The leading black-clothed cultivator stepped forward and bowed. Nye Tian nodded and entered the valley with everyone. Although the Wind Ghost Valley was called a valley, it was actually a continuous mountain range. However, the mountains were short and located in the middle of the mountain range. From afar, it looked like a canyon. After entering the Wind Ghost Valley, Nye Tian immediately felt that the aura in the surrounding space was much thicker than outside. His mood also improved a lot. Under the lead of the black-clothed cultivator, Nye Tian and the others quickly arrived at the Nine-Wind platform. High the tall pavilion stood on the peak of the mountain. It was like a sharp sword, incomparably sharp. A white-robed old man stood in the pavilion. He was short and skinny, and he looked kind and amiable, giving off a very amiable feeling. But beside the white-clothed old man stood a young man in green. He was not tall, but there was a strange feeling of power in his body. It was very terrifying. When Wenluan saw the young man in green, he could not help but tremble. He was quite surprised. He did not expect to meet Feng Kuan here. Nye Tian's eyes slightly sank. He quickly glanced at the young man in green and smiled faintly. Although it was only for a moment, but he could feel the terrifying power in Feng Kuan's body. He was definitely an extraordinary genius. Moreover, Feng Kuan's body had a murderous aura that could not be hidden. It was obviously cultivated from killing people for a long time. Beacon Emperor, that old man is the first elder of the Feng clan. Wenluan calmed down and secretly transmitted his voice to Nye Tian. Nye Tian nodded slightly. Since he did not see the Feng clan master, it was more like meeting the first elder. Welcome, Beacon Emperor. I was not able to welcome you earlier. Please forgive me for not being able to welcome you. The first elder of the Feng clan, Feng Yaoxing, smiled brightly and nodded slightly at Nye Tian. First elder, you are too kind. Nye Tian also walked confidently to the Nine-Wind platform. The Beacon Heaven Fate School is really weak. The Beacon King is a piece of trash who hasn't even reached heaven since. At this time, before Feng Yaoxing could speak, Feng Kuan, who was standing to the side, directly spoke. His eyes swept over Nye Tian with a disdainful look. Chapter 44:19. Feng Kuan looked at Nye Tian with disdain in his eyes. Fan Wenzhong, Wenluan, and the others saw this, their expressions changed. No matter what, Nye Tian was still the sect master of the Feng Tian Fate School. Even though his cultivation level was not high, his status was not something Feng Kuan could compare to. Thus, Feng Kuan's humiliation was equivalent to slapping the school's face. Moreover, although Nye Tian's cultivation level was not high, his combat strength was far beyond that of an ordinary person. Not to mention others, even Feng Kuan might not be a match for Nye Tian. Feng Kuan, don't be rude. Feng Yaoxing's face sank as he reprimanded coldly. Although he was reprimanding Nye Tian, Feng Yaoxing clearly did not care much. Moreover, the way he looked at Nye Tian had also changed. It should be that the latter's cultivation had disappointed him. It doesn't matter. Nye Tian smiled faintly, not caring at all. Wind he had seen many people like Kuan, so he could just ignore him. Buten Feng Kuan's eyes, Nye Tian's calmness was a concession, which made him even more insatiable. I heard that the Beacon Emperor had just defeated the Gia sect's provocation. I wonder if it's true? Feng Kuan glanced at Nye Tian coldly and said in a strange tone. Nye Tian narrowed his eyes and smiled faintly. I didn't expect the Wind Demon's clan to be so well informed in this forest. Beacon Emperor, you must be joking. Our Feng clan also has disciples in the Gia sect and the Beacon Heaven Fate sect, so of course we would know about such a big thing. Feng Yaoxing smiled and looked at Nye Tian with a fiery gaze. He was looking forward to the latter's next words. It's in fact, when they heard that Nye Tian had defeated the Gia sect, most of the Wind Demon's clan did not believe it. In fact, the rumors had described Nye Tian's strength to the point where he could destroy the heavens and the earth, which was simply unbelievable. What was even more ridiculous was that it was rumored that Nye Tian's cultivation was only at the 9th level of the heavenly tribulation, and he had yet to step into the heavenly insight realm. This was even more unbelievable. Feng Yaoxing had experienced too many things in his life. Of course, he knew that many legendary rumors were largely exaggerated. Before he saw Nye Tian, he still had some expectations in his heart. When he saw with his own eyes that Nye Tian was really just a heaven tribulation sage king, the expectations in his heart turned into disappointment. Wind Yaoxing did not believe that a Saint King martial artist could defeat the top 3 genius of Gia sect, Xianye. It was even rumored that when Nye Tian and Xianye fought, Nye Tian didn't even draw his sword. He only used his sword intent to make Xianye admit defeat. Of course, Feng Yaoxing could sense that Nye Tian was a swordsman, but he did not think that Nye Tian's sword intent was extraordinary. Wind Feng Kuan looked at Nye Tian with even more disdain in his eyes. He had once cultivated in Gia sect for a short period of time and had fought with Xianye. Although the latter was defeated by him, he was also injured. Although he had not seen Xianye for a long time, he believed that Xianye's strength was definitely not weak. Nye Tian was merely at the 9th level of the heavenly tribulation. Not to mention defeating Xianye, it was already very impressive if he could survive Xianye's attack. I did indeed defeat a few people from Gia sect, but they were too weak. They all admitted defeat before I even drew my sword. Nye Tian glanced at Feng Kuan and could naturally guess what the latter was thinking. Oh? I didn't expect Lord Beacon Emperor to be so strong even though his cultivation is not high. Feng Yaoxing's eyes darkened as he laughed. Anyone could hear the thick mockery in his laughter. Fan Zhong and Wenluan frowned. They wanted to speak a few times, but Nye Tian waved his hand to stop them. A group of frogs at the bottom of a well. Why bother explaining? So, Xianye really lost to you? Feng Kuan smiled cold. He obviously did not believe Nye Tian's words. If you don't believe me, you can try it yourself. Nye Tian's face was indifferent, but in Feng Kuan's eyes, it was extremely provocative. Provoking me? You're courting death. Feng Kuan's face instantly darkened as dense killing intent surged in his eyes. But at this moment, Feng Yaoxing stopped Feng Kuan and looked at Nye Tian. He said with a faint smile, "If Lord Beacon Emperor is interested, I can accompany you and bring you to the Wind Ghost martial arts field to have a look." Okay. How could Nye Tian not understand the meaning behind Feng Yaoxing's words? He smiled faintly and agreed. Wind Feng Kuan's face was gloomy. He did not understand why Feng Yaoxing did not let him fight. Feng Yaoxing naturally had his reasons for stopping Feng Kuan. On one hand, he felt that Feng Kuan was the #1 prodigy of the Wind Demon's clan. A mere Heaven Tribulation King Sage was not worth Feng Kuan's time. On the other hand, on one hand, Feng Yaoxing understood Feng Kuan's personality very well. Once he attacked, he would definitely not let it go. It would not be good if he injured Nye Tian. No matter what, Nye Tian was the master of Feng Tianming sect. Even though Feng Tianming sect had been weak in recent years, they still had their foundation. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. It was better not to provoke them. The last reason was that Feng Yaoxing could see that Nie Tian was not stupid. With such a confident look, he must have something to rely on. First, letting others fight with Nie Tian to test his strength was also not a bad idea. If it was really impossible, then it would not be too late to let Feng Kuan fight. Of course, Tian knew what Feng Yaoxing was planning, but he was not afraid at all. Since he came to visit the Wind Demon's clan, if he did not show his strength, how would he have the right to speak? Peace. After a while, Nie Tian and the others came to the Wind Demon martial field under Feng Yaoxing's lead. Although it was called the martial arts practice field, it was actually a vast valley surrounded by mountain cliffs that were tens of thousands of feet tall. It was indeed a place suitable for combat. At this time, there were dozens of cultivators fighting in the martial field. The scene was not very intense, it was just a normal exchange of pointers and pointers. Nie Tian glanced at them. These people were all very young and very strong. Most of them were Heaven Tribulation King sages. There were also a few Heaven Enlightenment Emperor sages. Lord Beacon Emperor, what do you think? Everyone stood on the high platform outside the martial field. Feng Yaoxing glanced at Nie Tian with a proud expression. Not bad. Nie Tian smiled faintly, not the slightest change in his expression. This dozens of people were so young and strong. It could indeed be seen how strong the Wind Demon's clan was. He knew that even a genius like Wen Luan was only at the first Heaven Awakening stage. In Nie Tian's opinion, the younger generation of the Wind Demon's clan was only not bad, but not enough to impress him. In that case, Lord Beacon Emperor, do you want to? Feng Yaoxing frowned. Obviously, he was not satisfied with Nie Tian's answer. However, before he could finish, Nie Tian had already made his move. Nie Tian didn't move. He only waved his hand, and a powerful sword intent descended from the heavens, leaving a deep ravine that was hundreds of meters long in the middle of the martial arts practice field. The ravine's position was quite clever. It happened to divide the martial field into two halves. The dozens of Wind Demon cultivators were in one half of the martial field, while the other half was empty. Lord Beacon Emperor, what is the meaning of this? Feng Yaoxing's expression suddenly turned cold. Great Elder, don't you want to test my strength? The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. With a disdainful look in his eyes, he said with a plain tone, I'll just stand here and not move. If anyone in the martial arts field can cross that ravine, I'll admit defeat. Chapter 44:20. Standing on the high platform, Nie Tian looked like a sharp sword, sharp and unstoppable. His voice was calm. But every sentence was like a clap of thunder, resounding in Feng Yaoxing and Feng Kuan's ears, causing them to be stunned. Beacon Emperor, are you kidding me? After a while, Feng Yaoxing's tone changed. His eyes trembled as he suppressed his anger. Nie Tian was too arrogant. Even though Feng Yaoxing wanted to act like a gentleman, he couldn't do it anymore. First Sword Gully wanted to block the dozens of Wind Ghost cultivators in the drill ground. Furthermore, he even wanted to stand on the high platform without moving. This was simply too arrogant. No, even Feng Yaoxing, who was close to the peak of Sky Martial Saint Ancestor, couldn't do it. Humph! Feng Kuan sneered and mocked. So the Beacon King of the Feng Tian Fate School is just a sharp-tongued man with an undeserved reputation. Even Fan Zhong, Wen Luan, and the others' expressions changed. They knew how strong Nie Tian was. They had seen it with their own eyes. However, what Nie Tian said was too shocking. They couldn't believe it. They knew that even Fan Zhong couldn't do what Nie Tian said. Only Tang 13 was calm and didn't panic. Since Nie Tian dared to say it, he could do it. First Elder, do I look like I'm joking? Nie Tian smiled. He looked at Feng Yaoxing confidently. Beacon Emperor, if that's the case, please let I see the world. Feng Yaoxing felt the confidence in Nie Tian's eyes. He said, "But I have to remind the Beacon Emperor that if the Beacon Emperor can't do it, the Wind Demon's clan will have to ask the Beacon Emperor to leave." Yaoxing thought, "If you insist on making a fool of yourself, I won't stop you." But if the Beacon Emperor was someone who only knew how to talk big, then there was no need to talk to him. Of course. Nie Tian smiled faintly and nodded. Wind Yaoxing's face turned cold as he looked at Feng Kuan. Feng Kuan understood. His figure flashed, and he arrived at the drill ground to inform the Wind Ghost cultivators. When the group of Wind Ghost cultivators heard Feng Kuan's words, they immediately became angry and locked their gazes on Nie Tian. "What an arrogant kid! You haven't reached the heaven enlightening realm yet and you dare to talk big. You are courting death. It's just a gully. You want to stop me? Dream on. Isn't he just relying on his identity as the Beacon Emperor? If he wasn't the Beacon Emperor, I would be the first to kill him." With these words, he glared at Nie Tian, his eyes brimming with killing intent. "Sir Beacon Emperor, they are ready." Feng Kuan returned to the high platform with a sinister smile. He was ready to watch a good show. "Let's begin." Nie Tian, however, smiled calmly. His eyes were infuriatingly calm. "Begin!" Feng Kuan roared, his voice like thunder. "Speak!" The moment he finished speaking, the cultivators in the drill ground immediately moved. A first-layer heavenly perception Saint Emperor took the lead. His body was like an arrow that had just left the bow as he directly charged over, wanting to pass through the gully. But at this moment, Nie Tian's eyes darkened. With a thought, the sky sword was unsheathed. A shocking sword aura rose from the ground and shook the surrounding space. "What a strong sword aura!" Fan Zhong's face darkened and he almost cried out. This was the second time he saw Nie Tian use his sword. The sword aura was much stronger than the last time. Previously, in the Hall of the Punishment Peak, Nie Tian had used his sword when he fought with Xin Yunhe. However, the sword aura was not as strong as it was now. It seems that the Beacon Emperor hid his strength in the Punishment Hall, Fan Zhong thought to himself in shock. Wen Luan was also stunned and could not react for a long time. On the other hand, Feng Yaoxing and Feng Kuan were utterly dumbfounded. They could not believe what they had just witnessed. Standing. Was the person in front of them really just a heavenly tribulation king sage? Boom! In the next moment, Nie Tian swung his sword, and an enormous amount of sword intent surged out. Like the Milky Way, it poured down and accurately landed on the gully in the martial arts practice field, forming a boundlessly powerful sword intent. 9 heavenly tribulation swords. Feng Yaoxing's eyes trembled. He scanned Nie Tian with his divine sense. The shock in his heart was clearly written on his face. He sensed that Nie Tian's sword principle cultivation was only at the 9 heavenly tribulation swords. But how was this possible? As an expert who was close to the peak, Feng Yaoxing had experienced countless battles in his life. Naturally, he had fought with strong sword principle cultivators. Not to mention a heavenly tribulation swordsman, even a sword consciousness-defying swordsman could not release such a terrifying wall of sword aura. Even among the sword martial saints, only a few people could have such a strong sword aura. But Nie Tian was only at the 9 heavenly tribulation swords. How could he have such a strong sword aura? The wall of sword intent descended like a raging wave, blocking the heavenly perception realm martial artist's path. How could this be? The warrior wanted to get close to the wall of sword aura, but the pressure of the sword aura was like an invisible hand, making it difficult for him to move. Was this wall of sword aura really released by that guy? The others felt the same pressure. Their legs felt like they were filled with lead sand, and they could not move at all. Feng Yaoxing could not help but gasp when he saw this. The Wind Ghost warriors in the training field could not even get within 10 meters of the wall of sword aura, let alone pass through it. He must have cheated. He can't have such strong power. Feng Kuan's face was gloomy. The corners of his mouth twitched as he screamed in his heart. He could not believe that such a strong power really came from Nie Tian. Fan Zhong noticed Feng Kuan's abnormality and could not help but become nervous. He stared at Feng Kuan. "Everyone, let's attack together and destroy this wall of sword aura." At this moment, a wind ghost cultivator shouted. Then, his figure retreated rapidly. His aura surged as he sent out a palm strike. Since he could not pass through the wall of sword aura, he would destroy it. Boom! Boom! When the others saw this, they followed suit. Waves of wild power rushed out and crashed into the wall of sword aura. When Fan Zhong and Wen Luan saw this, they immediately became nervous. Their hearts were in their throat. These people would definitely attack without caring about anything. Could Nie Tian block them? But Nie Tian was not afraid at all. The power of the gods and demons in his body soared. At the same time, starlight shone around him. It was piercing to the eyes like the sun. Feng Yaoxing's expression changed drastically. At that moment, he truly felt the terror of Nie Tian's sword aura. Even the swordsmen in Saint Defire's sword martial artists could not create such a terrifying presence. Bang bang bang! Waves of power fell and crashed into the wall of sword aura. They were absorbed like mud in the sea. The crowd of martial artists was shocked by the scene in front of them, and they all sucked in a breath of cold air, dumbfounded. Feng Yaoxing was also stunned by the scene, but he immediately understood something and cried out, "Oh no!" Boom! At that moment, the huge wall of sword aura shook and instantly gathered into a sky full of sword shadows. They exploded with an earth-shattering momentum and charged toward the dozens of warriors. Chapter 44-21. Dozens of wind ghost warriors on the martial arts practice field felt the enormous pressure. Their expressions changed instantly, and they were extremely frightened. Bang! 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 Then, a series of muffled sounds were heard. Figures flew out one after another, leaving bloody trails in the air. Feng Kuan and the others on the high platform were completely stunned. They looked at the people on the martial arts practice field in a daze. They couldn't believe the scene in front of them. Nie Tian was simply a monster. He was only at the 9th heaven tribulation realm, but he had such terrifying power. Dozens of wind ghost warriors were severely injured. Some were even lying on the ground, unable to get up. This. Great Elder Feng Yaoxing's lips trembled, and he couldn't say a word at all. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that things would turn out this way. Great Elder, I won. Nie Tian smiled faintly. The sharpness in his eyes was terrifying. Fan Zhong, Wen Luan, and the others were stunned for a long time before they finally reacted. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that a 9th heaven tribulation realm warrior could be so terrifying. Fan Zhong became even more determined. Following Nie Tian was the wisest decision he had made in his life. However, at this moment, a deep roar echoed out. It was Feng Kuan. Nie Tian, how dare you injure a member of the Wind Ghoul tribe? Feng Kuan's eyes were red. He was like a ferocious beast bathed in blood, and his killing intent was sharp. Nie Tian frowned and said coldly, "They are only injured. They will be fine." The people on the martial arts practice field were the best of the Wind Ghost tribe's younger generation. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were the future of the Wind Ghost tribe. Because of this, Nie Tian had a sense of propriety when he attacked. He only injured them, but he didn't kill them. If he really released the power of the divine demon sword intent, these people would be crippled even if they didn't die. Lord Beacon Emperor, thank you for your mercy. Feng Yaoxing finally calmed down and bowed slightly to Nie Tian to show his respect. How could he not see that Nie Tian still had some power left in him after his outburst? Otherwise, many of these wind ghost race cultivators would have died. Although Nie Tian injured them, Feng Yaoxing wanted to test Nie Tian's strength, so he couldn't say anything. Feng Yaoxing didn't expect the young Beacon Emperor to be so strong. He even had a feeling that even if he were to fight Nye Tian now, he might not necessarily be able to defeat him. Great Elder, he has injured so many of us. Are we just going to let him go like this? Feng Kuan did not let the matter rest as he furiously roared and asked. Nye Tian frowned, looked at Feng Kuan and asked, "Then what do you want?" Feng said. Feng Yaoxing said. Battle, by Feng said. Are you sure? Nye Tian's eyes grew grim as he smiled viciously. Although Feng Kuan was known as the #1 genius of the Wind Ghost clan, he did not care about him at all. Feng is Feng of Feng is Feng of the ghost of Feng of the gods. Feng is Feng is a Feng. Feng Kuan is nothing to be afraid of. Yes. Feng Kuan's eyes were cold and murderous. Feng Kuan, you have seen the strength of the Beacon Emperor. We didn't come to the Wind Ghost Valley to establish our might but to seek cooperation. Wenluan frowned and said in a deep voice. Shut up. Feng Kuan stared at Wenluan and said, Do you have the right to speak here? You. Wenluan's face stiffened and his chest heaved. He and Feng Kuan were in the same generation and his sister was engaged to Feng Kuan. However, Feng Kuan didn't care about him at all. How could he not be angry? Feng Kuan, the Beacon Emperor didn't come here to provoke us. Let's forget about the battle, Feng Yaoxing said. He couldn't stand it anymore. Impossible. The look in Feng Kuan's eyes grew even more sinister. He stared at Nye Tian and said in a deep voice, I have to fight. Since that's the case, then as you wish. Nye Tian couldn't stand it anymore and said cold. He moved and came to the sky above the martial arts field. Feng Kuan was so arrogant. If he avoided the battle, he would be a coward. Good. Feng Kuan sneered and stood in the sky like lightning, facing Nye Tianling. This. Feng Yaoxing's face darkened and he was speechless. Great Elder, don't worry. The Beacon Emperor knows his limits, Fan Zhong said with a smile. He knew what Feng Yaoxing was thinking. Nye Tian and the others were looking for an opportunity to cooperate with the Wind Demon's clan. Therefore, no matter how angry Nye Tian was, he wouldn't kill Feng Kuan. He would teach him a lesson at most. Feng Yaoxing heard Fan Zhong's words but his face didn't change for the better. Instead, it became gloomier. It was as if he was worried about something. Tang 13 could tell that Feng Yaoxing was worried about Nye Tian and thought, looks like this Feng Kuan is something. Since Feng Yaoxing had seen Nye Tian's strength, but he was still worried about Nye Tian, it meant that Feng Kuan was indeed a powerful cultivator. Could it be that Feng Kuan has mastered the 8 Ghost Wind Dance? Wenluan also noticed and was worried. But it was too late to say anything now. Hopefully, Nye Tian wouldn't underestimate Feng Kuan. Otherwise, something big would happen. Beacon Emperor, do you think that I am an arrogant idiot? In the sky, Feng Kuan looked at Nye Tian with cold eyes and an evil smile. You are not an idiot. You are just too arrogant. Nye Tian smiled. He didn't underestimate Feng Kuan. On the contrary, he thought that Feng Kuan must have something to rely on to provoke him. Therefore, in this battle, Nye Tian didn't plan to hold back. If necessary, he could even activate the demon god physique. Even though Feng Kuan's life was important compared to his own, Nye Tian obviously cared more about his own life. Is that so? Feng Kuan sneered and shouted, That's because I have the right to be arrogant. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Kuan took a step forward and a terrifying energy surged around him. Strange runes condensed and connected in the air. In the blink of an eye, a huge array formation was formed, covering an area of a few thousand meters. This is... Wenluan felt the aura of the bloodline inside the array formation, and his eyes widened in shock. Night-devouring boundary. Feng Yaoxing's expression changed as he stuttered. Could it be the blood sacrifice boundary of the 8 Ghost Wind Dance? Wenluan's eyes shrunk as he thought of something. He had heard from Wenho that the bloodline power of the Wind Demon's clan was called the Night-devouring Snow Cicada. It was a special bloodline that originated from the ancient snow cicada. The night-devouring snow cicada's power allowed the martial artists of the Wind Demons clan to cultivate the Eight-Ghost Wind Dance. In the Eight-Ghost Wind Dance there was a blood sacrifice boundary, which was the night-devouring boundary. The night-devouring boundary was terrifying. Once it was activated, it could increase a martial artist's ability by a few times. It could also suppress the opponent's power. However, the night-devouring boundary caused great damage to the bloodline. Hence, unless it was absolutely necessary, the night-devouring boundary would never be activated. Moreover, there was only one way to break the night-devouring boundary apart from the caster, and that was to kill the caster. No one expected Feng Kuan to activate the night-devouring boundary directly. Please remember this book's domain name. Com. Wonderful Book House Mobile Version Website. Com. Chapter 44-22. Feng Yaoxing stared at the night-devourer realm in the sky with trembling eyes. Feng Kuan, why did you have to be so impulsive? Why did you have to force the Wind Demons clan into a corner? He had watched Feng Kuan grow up, so he knew his temperament very well. Feng Kuan was known as the #1 genius of the Wind Demons clan. He had enjoyed supreme glory since he was young and was the center of attention of the clan. He had developed an extremely arrogant temperament and thought highly of himself. Just the strength that Nie Tian had displayed just now must have greatly stimulated Feng Kuan. His jealousy had turned into hatred and killing intent. Feng Kuan provoked Nie Tian by directly activating the Night-Devourer realm. He was obviously prepared to die. This between him and Nie Tian, only one would survive this battle. However, regardless of the outcome of this battle, it was not what Feng Yaoxing wanted to see. Because no matter who died, the Fengtian Fate sect and the Wind Demons clan would be like fire and water. Although he had seen Nie Tian's strength, Feng Yaoxing felt that the winner of this battle was more likely to be Feng Kuan. Body as a member of the Wind Demons clan, Feng Yaoxing was well aware of the terror of the Night-Devourer realm. Slight, it was not an exaggeration to say that even he, Feng Yaoxing, would only have one outcome if he fell into Feng Kuan's Night-Devourer realm: death. With Nie Tian's death, the Wind Demons clan would have to face the wrath of the Fengtian Fate sect. Feng Yaoxing originally thought that the Wind Demons clan and the Fengtian Fate sect might have a chance to cooperate, but Feng Kuan's recklessness had completely destroyed this opportunity. That madman! Wen Luan also knew how terrifying the Night-Devourer realm was. He roared in anger. Fan Zhong frowned and his expression darkened. Although he didn't know how powerful the Night-Devourer realm was, he could tell from Feng Yaoxing and Wen Luan's expressions that Nie Tian was in danger. This spirit formation is indeed strange. Tang 13's expression also changed slightly, but she wasn't panicking. His ghost, I was naturally able to tell how dangerous the night-devouring realm was. But, he still had confidence in Nie Tian. He was a close friend of Nie Tian, and they had experienced countless life and death situations together. He knew very well how terrifying Nie Tian was. Namely, even if the Night-Devourer realm was the blood sacrifice barrier of the Wind Demons clan, it couldn't do anything to Nie Tian. Within the devouring night barrier, Nie Tianling stood alone, sharp as a sword. There was no fear in his eyes, only a strong desire to fight. Nonetheless to say, he didn't expect Feng Kuan to have such a trick up his sleeve. However, this didn't scare him. Instead, it made him feel a surge of battle intent. Beacon Emperor, you are much calmer than I thought, Feng Kuan said coldly. Violent energy surged around him and rushed towards the sky. At this time, Nie Tian finally saw Feng Kuan's strength clearly. He was actually a 9th-level heavenly perception holy emperor. With Feng Kuan's age, it was easy to imagine how talented he was to have such a cultivation level. No, there was an aura in Feng Kuan's body that made Nie Tian feel very uncomfortable. Although this aura came from his bloodline, it was incompatible with his body. It seemed to be struggling and wanting to rush out of his body. According to Wen Luan, the bloodline of the Wind Demon's clan was originally getting weaker and weaker, so the clan became weaker and weaker. That was why they came to the seventh cultivator's sacred world and became a hidden family. However, in the recent thousands of years, the bloodline of the Wind Demon's clan suddenly became stronger, which is why a genius like Feng Kuan appeared. Nie Tian frowned. He suddenly remembered what Wen Luan had said before. He suddenly felt that the recovery of the bloodline of the Wind Demon's clan might not be simple. Go to hell! At this time, Feng Kuan roared and moved. He turned into a ray of light in the sky, and a snake-shaped sword appeared in his hand. He slashed down and attacked Nie Tian. Boom! The sky suddenly sank and the world seemed to collapse. The terrifying sword intent condensed into a huge snake in the sky. It opened its bloody mouth and pounced over. Nie Tian immediately felt an overwhelming pressure, and he couldn't help but frown. He did not expect Feng Kuan to be a swordsman and have even reached the god-defying level of sword intent. Feng Kuan's strength was originally a realm higher than Nie Tian's. In addition, he had the advantage of the sword Dao, the increase in strength under the night-devouring realm, and the boundary's suppression on Nie Tian. This was easy to imagine how strong the pressure of this sword was. Wen Yaoxing's expression changed when he saw this through the boundary. Such as this sword was powerful enough to kill some high-level heavenly martial divine ancestors in an instant. Boom! However, right at this moment, Nie Tian took a step forward, and the sword aura around his body surged up. The clear sky sword was like the scorching sun rising from the east, emitting a dazzling light. It actually blocked Feng Kuan's sword. Boom! A muffled sound was heard from the night-devouring realm. Nie Tian retreated for 100 meters before he could stabilize himself. On the other hand, Feng Kuan was as steady as a mountain and did not move at all. In the night-devouring realm, Nie Tian was still slightly weaker than Feng Kuan. But at this moment, there was no joy in Feng Kuan's eyes. Instead, there was shock and horror. He had never expected that his sword would be blocked by Nie Tian. Moreover, Nie Tian was only forced to retreat and was not injured. How was this possible? Namely, under the suppression of the night-devouring realm, how could Nie Tian still have such strong strength? His strength does not seem to be suppressed. Outside the boundary, Feng Yaoxing saw some clues and his eyes trembled violently. He could not believe it. Although he was far away, he could still feel that the power of the night-devouring realm could not suppress Nie Tian at all. The night-devouring realm was the blood-sacrifice boundary of the Wind Demon's clan. It had a strong suppression on most martial artists. Some of the weaker cultivators would not be able to bring out any of their strength in the night-devouring realm. But it was Nie Tian, yet he wasn't affected in the slightest. This was too strange. The night-devouring realm was activated by the night-devouring snow cicada. It was a suppression at the level of bloodline. Even the martial artists in the boundary who had the same level of bloodline as the night-devouring snow cicada would feel a strong suppression. No, there was only one reason for the suppression of the night-devouring realm. Nie Tian's bloodline power was far stronger than the night-devouring snow cicada's bloodline power of the Wind Demon's clan. But the night-devouring snow cicada was already a top bloodline power. Otherwise, the Wind Demon's clan would not have been ranked among the aristocratic families. There were already very few bloodlines that were stronger than the night-devouring snow cicada, let alone bloodlines that far surpassed it. Nye heavens, this was too terrifying. There was another point that shocked Feng Yaoxing. He could tell that Nie Tian had been injured by the sword just now. However, the injury was not serious and it healed in an instant. But under that level of collision, even a light injury would be extremely difficult to heal. Nye, the fact that his heavens could heal in an instant showed the strength of his martial body and the terrifying recovery ability. Feng Yaoxing's eyes trembled as he realized that no matter how he looked at it, Nie Tian was a peerless genius. Is this the capital to be arrogant like you said? Nye Tion's cold gaze locked onto Feng Kuan from afar. It was extremely provocative. You're courting death. Feng Kuan was instantly enraged. He roared and waved the snake sword in his hand. His aura surged again. Chapter 44-23. Boom! In the Night Devourer's realm, Feng Kuan's qi surged again. How is this possible? Fan Zhong and Wenluan were shocked. They couldn't understand why Feng Kuan would have such terrifying power even in the Night Devourer's realm. Why are you doing this? Feng Yaoxing's face was filled with pain. He clenched his fists tightly and sweat covered them. How could he not know that Feng Kuan had to burn his bloodline power to increase his strength? Moreover, the burning of his bloodline power wasn't just a simple consumption. It would also cause great damage to his bloodline power. Also, in other words, the bloodline power that Feng Kuan burned might not be able to recover. He had sworn to kill Nye Tian at the cost of his own bloodline. This guy is crazy. Tang 13 saw through everything. She frowned and her face darkened. In fact, there was no grudge between Feng Kuan and Nye Tian. She didn't know where Feng Kuan's murderous intent came from. Lord Beacon Emperor, do you think I have the right to be arrogant now? Feng Kuan's body was enshrouded in a violent aura. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Nye Tian and said with a hideous expression. Nye Tian frowned, but he wasn't afraid at all. He smiled. Just a little bit more. You. Being provoked once again, Feng Kuan was instantly enraged. With a wild roar, he slashed the 8-limbed night serpent's origin spirit sword across the sky. Instantly, the void trembled, and the power that was as vast as the sea completely burst out, rumbling and pressing towards Nye Tian. Nye Tian took a few steps back. He was shocked. He didn't expect Feng Kuan to be so powerful. He had to admit that he had underestimated Feng Kuan. No, still didn't feel threatened. Next instantly, the celestial devil reverse mark appeared at the corner of Nye Tian's eyes. The moment he activated the celestial devil body, his chi aura changed. His sword aura surged like a dragon soaring into the sky. Bang! The two chi auras collided in the air. The earth shook as if it was going to collapse. 8 winds ghost dance, cold cicada cries blood. Right at this moment, Feng Kuan's gaze was extremely ruthless, and his face was distorted as if Nye Tian was the enemy that annihilated his family. Just like that, the atmosphere in the night devouring realm changed as soon as he finished speaking. Cold, austere, silent, and abyss-like. Very even the world outside the barrier was covered in a layer of killing intent. In the void, one could clearly see the fluttering frost and snow. Night-devouring snow cicada. Wenluan's eyes were trembling, and so was his voice. He knew that this was the bloodline power of the Wind Demon's clan, the night-devouring snow cicada. Under Feng Kuan's extreme stimulation, it had actually leaked out of the barrier. Feng Yaoxing's eyes were bloodshot, and his face was extremely gloomy. Wind Kuan had activated the night-devouring world and used the 6th form of the ghost dance of 8 winds' 6th form, the cold cicada weeping blood, which was a huge burden on his bloodline power. Under such circumstances, even if Feng Kuan won, he would suffer a bloodline injury. Moreover, it would be a bloodline injury that could not be healed. He had never thought that Feng Kuan would end up like this. If he had known earlier, he would have stopped Feng Kuan and not allowed the battle to begin. In the night-devouring realm, Nye Tian felt the sudden change in the void's atmosphere, and his face darkened. Die! In the chaotic void, Feng Kuan's roar resounded with hysterical madness. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Nye Tian frowned, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Immediately afterwards, Nye Tian took a step forward, wreathed in dazzling starlight that made him look like a blazing sun. Starry sky, universe reversal. How the heavenly sword swept across the void like a white rainbow. The godly demon sword essence merged with the power of the stars, and an unprecedented aura and power erupted. Bang! In the next instant, a low rumble was heard, and the night-devouring realm shook. The space seemed to be pulled by a huge force, and it let out a low wail as if it was about to be torn apart. Then, the crowd outside the spirit formation saw an exceptionally terrifying scene. A white crack appeared on the surface of the night-devouring realm. How is this possible? Feng Yaoxing's expression changed as he realized something. His heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. He could not believe his eyes. The night-devouring realm was about to break. Bang! 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 Then, a series of muffled noises were heard, and white cracks appeared on the night-devouring realm in the shape of a spider web. Blink in the blink of an eye, the seemingly unbreakable night-devouring realm was on the verge of collapsing. Fan Zhong, Wen Luan, and the others were so excited that tears were about to fall from their eyes. Only Tang 13 remained calm, and her brows were tightly knitted together. Even under such circumstances, Tang 13 could clearly see what was going on inside the spirit domain. Rumble! Right at this moment, a terrifying rumble sounded out from the void. The night-devouring realm was collapsing. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, an endless amount of energy spread wildly, and it was as if the sky and earth were about to be engulfed. So after a long time, the waves slowly receded, and two figures appeared. It was Nie Tian and Feng Kuan. However, Feng Kuan had already fainted and was lying flat in the air. Nie Tian was beside him, and his face was pale. Fan Zhong and the others stared at the two of them, not knowing what had happened. If I didn't kill him, the Wind Demon's clan might not be grateful. Tang 13 smiled bitterly and sighed in her heart. He saw very clearly that Nie Tian broke Feng Kuan's night-devouring realm with one strike. Originally, Feng Kuan and his realm should have disappeared. However, at the last moment, Nie Tian's heart softened, and he used the power of his 10th vital meridian to save Feng Kuan's life. Fortunately, Nie Tian had the 10th vital meridian. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to save Feng Kuan even if he wanted to. However, although Feng Kuan survived, his bloodline was severely damaged. It was almost impossible for him to recover to his previous level. At this moment, Nie Tian moved and brought Feng Kuan to Feng Yaoxing's side. He said calmly, "First Elder, I will save his life." Yao Xing's eyes trembled as 2 lines of tears flowed down. He took Feng Kuan from Nie Tian's hands, while trembling. This result was something Feng Yaoxing never expected. Feng Kuan, who activated the night-devouring realm, actually lost to Nie Tian. How could Nie Tian, who was only at the 9th level of Heaven Tribulation, be so strong? What Feng Yaoxing didn't expect was that not only did Nie Tian break the night-devouring realm, but he also saved Feng Kuan's life. Wind Yaoxing knew very well that Nie Tian saved Feng Kuan's life because he didn't want the Wind Demon's clan and Feng Tian Fate sect to go to extremes. However, could this really avoid extremes? Feng Kuan survived, but his bloodline talent was gone. Was Feng Kuan still valuable to the Wind Demon's clan? At this moment, an important decision was placed in front of Feng Yaoxing. Should he kill Nie Tian or not? Please remember this book's domain name. Com. Wonderful Book House's mobile version. Com. Chapter 4424. Feng Yaoxing's eyes trembled, and his heart was in turmoil. Feng Kuan was defeated. Although his life was saved, his bloodline talent was severely damaged and could not be recovered. To the Wind Demon's clan, Feng Kuan's greatest value was his powerful talent and potential. But now this potential was gone. So is that so? Does the Wind Ghost clan still want to work with the Feng Tian Fate sect? Originally the Wind Demon's clan and Gia sect were close. Nie Tian visiting Feng Tian Ming's sect on behalf of Feng Tian Ming's sect was obviously interfering. Although Feng Kuan's accident was caused by his provocation, the result was still caused. So if this matter was known to the other upper echelons of the Wind Demons clan, it would definitely cause an uproar. Feng Yaoxing guessed that the Wind Demons clan would most likely declare war on Feng Tianming sect. If that was the case, he would have to kill Nie Tian directly. Not to mention Nie Tian's identity, just his strength and talent alone could not be left alive. Grand Elder, you're considering if you want to kill me, right? Nie Tian saw Feng Yaoxing's reaction and obviously knew what the latter was thinking. He smiled and said directly. Fan Zhong was already very nervous. Hearing Nie Tian's words, he immediately tensed up. Everyone's expression changed, and their eyes focused on Feng Yaoxing. Although everyone sensed that Feng Yaoxing's emotions were strange, they did not expect Nie Tian to say it so directly. Sir Beacon Emperor, although you saved Feng Kuan's life, you can't restore his talent. Feng Kuan without talent is worthless to the Wind Demons clan. Feng Yaoxing looked straight at Nie Tian with a gloomy expression. You killed the #1 genius of the Wind Demons clan, which is equivalent to killing the future of the Wind Demons clan. Do you think I should let you leave alive? In the end, Feng Yaoxing's eyes surged with unconcealable killing intent. Wind Kuan was extremely talented and had long been recognized as the next leader of the Wind Demons clan. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the future of the Wind Demons clan. Nie Tian frowned and said, Does Grand Elder really think that Feng Kuan is the future of the Wind Demons clan? Feng Kuan's talent is indeed very high, but as for his temperament, I believe that First Elder should be very clear about it. Originally, the Great Elder did not agree to this battle, but Feng Kuan insisted on provoking him. He hasn't even taken control yet, and he's already like this. When he truly takes control of the Wind Demons clan, won't he be able to cover the sky with one hand and dictate everything? With his character, can he really bring a bright future to the Wind Demons clan? Tian questioned coldly, causing Feng Yaoxing's eyes to tremble. He immediately fell into deep thought. Yes, indeed, the higher-ups of the Wind Demons clan had been worried about Nie Tian. Just like when Feng Kuan killed many disciples of the Gia sect in Gia sect, which almost caused the Gia sect to be furious. In the end, the Wind Demons clan sent Feng Li and the others to Gia sect and agreed to some conditions of the Gia sect. Only then did the matter settle down. However, the higher-ups of the Wind Demons clan felt that Feng Kuan was just too young. After some experience and training, he would definitely mature and steady. But unfortunately, the truth was not so. As Feng Kuan's strength continued to increase, his arrogance also became more and more severe. Until now, other than the clan leader and the Great Elder who could slightly restrain Feng Kuan had completely disregarded everyone else. Just like that just now, even though Feng Yaoxing objected to Feng Kuan challenging Nie Tian, he still did it. Moreover, he did it without any hesitation. One thinking about this, Feng Yaoxing's heart ached. Why couldn't he have stopped Feng Kuan? But now, things had already happened, and it was too late to say anything. Great Elder, rather than saying that this Empress erased the future of the Wind Demons clan, it would be better to say that this Empress pointed out a better future for the Wind Demons clan. Nie Tian saw that Feng Yaoxing was silent for a long time and knew that he was hesitating. What do you mean? Feng Yaoxing raised his eyebrows in confusion. Great Elder, I heard that the Wind Demons clan has been in contact with the Gia sect for a long time, but they have never established a deeper alliance with the Gia sect. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, This Empress is guessing that you are also hesitating and doubting whether the Gia sect is the best partner. So what? Feng Yaoxing's face was gloomy and cold. Indeed, although the Wind Demons clan had been in contact with the Gia sect, it was far from the point of forming an alliance. The Gia sect had risen rapidly in recent years, and its limelight had overshadowed the Feng Tian sect. It was indeed a very attractive partner to form an alliance with. But the Gia sect didn't want to form an alliance with the Wind Demons clan. Instead, they wanted the Wind Demons clan to attach to the Gia sect and become its vassal. If it was an ordinary family force, they would definitely agree. But the Wind Demon's clan was different. After all, they were an aristocratic family with a deep foundation. Even if they had declined, they still had their own dignity. How could they be the vassal of others at will? It was precisely because of this that the Wind Demon's clan maintained a certain distance from the Gia sect. Wen Yaoxing didn't expect Nie Tian to be able to see so much from the surface at such a young age. Fan Zhong was also stunned. He admired Nie Tian from the bottom of his heart. Of previously, even he didn't think about it in this direction. He had always thought that the Wind Demon's clan and the Gia sect had a close relationship. He even felt that this trip to the Wind Demon's clan was unnecessary. But he didn't expect Nie Tian to be able to see the deeper truth. After thinking about it again, he roughly understood in his heart. Back when he cooperated with the Gia sect, the Gia sect's condition was that the Feng Tian sect submit to the Gia sect. Come to think of it, the conditions that the Gia sect and the Wind Demon's clan had made were similar. It was just that the Wind Demon's clan had their own strength of character and didn't agree to the Gia sect. Thinking about it, everything was much more clear. The Wind Demon's clan didn't form an alliance with the Gia sect. There must be something else. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He didn't say it but said, I represent the Feng Tian sect and am willing to form an alliance with the Wind Demon's clan. Both parties are of equal status, mutually beneficial, and share weal and woe. How about it? Feng Yaoxing was stunned at first, then he sneered. Lord Beacon Emperor, aren't your words a little too arrogant? Although I don't understand the Feng Tian sect, I have heard a little about your strength. The Feng Tian sect was indeed powerful a long time ago. But now I'm afraid it's no longer comparable to the past, right? You're right, First Elder. Nie Tian nodded with a smile. But First Elder should know that a centipede dies but doesn't fall down, and a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. No matter how weak the Feng Tian sect is, it's still a big sect. Is that so? Feng Yaoxing sneered again, and couldn't help but glance at Wen Luan. But I heard that a few days ago the Gia sect came to provoke them. Even Wen Luan, the head disciple of the Feng Tian sect, lost miserably. If it wasn't for the Beacon Emperor, the Feng Tian sect would have lost completely. Wen Luan's eyes narrowed and his expression was a little embarrassed. As the head disciple of the Feng Tian sect, it was indeed a little unreasonable that he couldn't even beat a martial artist ranked below the top 10 in the Gia sect. Feng Yaoxing's words were very clear. No matter how strong Nie Tian was, he was only one person. On the other hand, the Gia sect had countless talented disciples. Was this a disadvantage that he could make up for alone? Moreover, Nie Tian hadn't truly grown up yet. Chapter 44-25. Feng Yaoxing's face was filled with disdain as the coldness in his eyes intensified. Fan Zhong could not help but become nervous as his aura locked onto Feng Yaoxing. If they were to fight, he must strike first before Feng Yaoxing could make a move. As the great elder of the Wind Demon's clan, Feng Yaoxing's strength should be above Fan Zhong's. However, Nie Tian's expression was calm as he looked at Feng Yaoxing calmly. I alone can defeat the entire Ghost Cliff sect. Defeat your entire sect alone. As Nie Tian said this, a faint aura rose from his body as if it could defy the heavens. Feng Yaoxing looked at the silver-haired young man and could sense the domineering confidence in the latter's eyes. His heart could not help but tremble. Even though he had experienced countless things in his life and heard countless heroic words, he was still amazed by the young martial artist before him. One person defeating an entire sect. What kind of aura was that? Fan Zhong, Wen Luan, and the rest were stunned as well. They did not expect Nie Tian to say such shocking words. Subsequently, Feng Yaoxing fell into silence. After a long time, the coldness in Feng Yaoxing's eyes dissipated and he said in a hoarse voice, Sir Beacon Emperor, this is a matter of great importance. I will need to discuss with the clan leader and the Elder Council. He had to admit that he was stunned by Nie Tian's aura. With such an outstanding beacon emperor, there was no need for the Feng Tian Fate sect to worry about not being able to prosper. Another thing was that Feng Yaoxing could not be sure. If they really fell out, would he be able to kill Nie Tian? Of course. Nie Tian smiled faintly and agreed readily. Feng Yaoxing's identity was respected, but the alliance was related to the future of the Wind Demon's clan. Of course, he could not decide on his own. Since that's the case, we will take our leave first. We will visit again in the future. Seeing this, Fan Zhong took a step forward and hurriedly bid his farewell. He was worried that if he followed Feng Yaoxing to meet the higher-ups of the Wind Demon's clan, it would be troublesome if the Wind Demon's clan fell out with him. If it was just Feng Yaoxing alone, he might be able to handle it, but if there were a few more Wind Ghost Elders, he would have no chance of winning. Feng Yaoxing was intelligent and naturally understood the meaning behind Fan Zhong's words. However, he could not stop him and could only force a smile and nod his head. The alliance between the two sides is a big deal, and it's also a good thing. Naturally, it will only get better. But at that moment, Nie Tian smiled and said, "Since I'm already here, there's no harm in taking this opportunity to meet the Wind Demon's higher-ups. Sir Beacon Emperor, there are still some matters in the sect that you need to attend to. Moreover, the alliance is not urgent, so we should take our leave first." Fan Zhong's expression changed as he said hurriedly. Nie Tian was not stupid. He could tell that Fan Zhong was worried, so he smiled and said, "Flag Leader Fan, you're worrying too much." This. Fan Zhong's expression darkened, and he could not say a word. Since Nie Tian had said so, what else could he say? Sir Beacon Emperor is indeed extraordinary. Please follow me. Feng Yaoxing could not help but smile. His impression of Nie Tian immediately improved, so he stood up and led the way. Feng Yaoxing handed Feng Kuan over to the others, then brought Nie Tian and the others to the Wind Demon's clan's meeting hall. The Wind Demon's clan lived in the mountains. Unlike ordinary families, it was more like a sect. Even the meeting hall was in a valley. The valley was very simple, and there were only some stone benches. In a corner of the valley there was a stone drum with a unique shape. After entering the valley, Feng Yaoxing gestured for everyone to take a seat. Then, he came before the stone drum and sounded it to summon people. Moments later, elders in green entered the valley one after another. They were the elders of the Wind Demon's clan. Feng Yaoxing introduced them one by one and let the elders take a seat. Nie Tian observed secretly. The Wind Demon's clan's elders were similar to the One clan's elders. There were about 10 of them, but their auras were thicker, and it was obvious that they were stronger. "How's the clan leader?" Seeing that most of the elders had arrived, Feng Yaoxing looked at a slightly shorter elder with a goatee and asked. "Since the Wind Demon drum has sounded, the clan leader should be here soon." The elder with a goatee nodded slightly and looked at Nie Tian strangely. Nie Tian frowned. He felt that the atmosphere was not right. Lord Beacon Emperor, could the people from the Wind Demon's clan be plotting something? Fan Zhong also sensed it and asked secretly through voice transmission. "It's fine." Nie Tian smiled faintly and gestured for Fan Zhong to calm down. After a while, a tall and skinny middle-aged man appeared and walked into the valley with a majestic gait. When Feng Yaoxing and the elders saw this person, they stood up and bowed respectfully. "Looks like he's the clan leader of the Wind Demon's clan." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he stood up as well. He secretly sized up the tall and skinny man. This man looked to be about the same age as the clan leader of the One clan, Wen Xiang. However, his aura was extremely thick, even stronger than that of the One clan's grand elder, Wen Qingmu. At this moment, Nie Tian had already realized that the Wind Ghouls were much more powerful than the One clan, judging from the clanmaster and the elders' reactions. The middle-aged man was the clan leader of the Wind Demon's clan, Wind Demon. Wind Demon's original name was Feng Lingyun. After becoming the clan leader, he took on the unique name of the Wind Demon's clan. There was a tradition in the Wind Demon's clan. Once the clan leader became the clan leader, the word ghost would be added after the word Fong. For example, if Fong Kuan became the clan leader, his name would be Fong Gue Kuan. Wind Demon sat on the main seat and gestured for everyone to take their seat. Then, he locked his eagle-like eyes on Yetian. Clan leader, this is the Beacon Emperor of the Sky Beacon Sect, Yetian. Fong Yaoxing quickly introduced with a smile. Sky Beacon Emperor, you're indeed a young talent. Wind Demon smiled faintly. His voice was hearty but his eyes were deep. Yetian nodded and smiled without saying anything. Great Elder. Then, Wind Demon looked at Fong Yaoxing. The latter must have something important to say since he struck the Wind Demon drum. Fong Yaoxing nodded and told him what happened just now. He also explained Yetian's intention to form an alliance. However, as soon as he finished speaking, there was an uproar on the spot. This Beacon Emperor is too insolent. He actually injured Fong Kuan's bloodline. Yeah, Fong Kuan's bloodline was injured. Isn't this the same as crippling him? In the Wind Demon Valley, he injured the younger brother of the Wind Demon clan and severely injured Fong Kuan. Now, he wants to form an alliance with us. This Beacon Emperor is really scheming. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yetian. They didn't care about the cause of the matter at all. They all criticized him, and some even had killing intent on their faces. Yetian frowned. Although he had expected such a situation, he didn't expect the elders to react so fiercely. Fong Yaoxing looked very embarrassed. Although he knew what had happened, he couldn't explain that it was Fong Kuan's fault. Furthermore, given the current situation, even if he were to truly explain himself, these elders might not believe him. After a long time, the valley quieted down. Everyone looked at Wind Demon at the same time. Because Wind Demon wasn't only the clan leader of the Wind Demon clan, but he also had another identity, Fong Kuan's father. Please remember this book's domain name. Biaoshu.com mobile version website. M. Chapter 4426. The patriarch of the Wind Demon's clan, Wind Demon, was Fong Kuan's father. Fong Yaoxing's expression was very ugly and his eyes were trembling. It was obvious that he was very nervous. Fong Kuan was heavily injured by Yetian and almost lost his bloodline, but he still brought Yetian here. This was undoubtedly to tell Wind Demon that he agreed to cooperate with the Wind Demon's clan and Heaven Beacon Sect. Wind Ghost Ling Yun's face was gloomy like a lion, releasing a terrifying aura. At this moment, no one could feel the rage that Wind Demon was suppressing in his heart. Lord Beacon Emperor. After a moment of silence, Wind Demon stood up and locked his frighteningly dark eyes on Yetian. You're here to form an alliance with the Wind Demon's clan, right? Yetian nodded and also stood up. Wind Demon clan leader, this emperor did not come to the Wind Demon's clan to provoke you. Fong Kuan's matter was just an accident. He activated the night-devouring boundary during the battle. This emperor tried his best but could only barely save his life. Yetian was not a coward, but there were some things that had to be made clear. Wind Demon's eyes trembled and his expression became even darker as if he was thinking about something. He did not expect Fong Kuan to use the night-devouring boundary. Fong Yaoxing did not mention this earlier. As the saying goes, no one knows a son better than a father. Wind Demon knew Fong Kuan's personality very well. Although Fong Yaoxing did not explain in detail, he could roughly guess what happened. However, he was still surprised that Fong Kuan used the night-devouring boundary. Since this was the case, it was enough to prove that Fong Kuan was determined to kill Yetian at that time. The fact that Yetian had spared his life even though he had defeated him was already very benevolent. However, no matter how wrong Fong Kuan was, he was still Wind Demon's son. Could it be that he, the clan leader, was really going to form an alliance with the enemy who had injured his son? At that moment, the expressions of the Wind Demon's clan's elders changed. Fong Kuan activated the night-devouring world, but he was still defeated by this kid. How is this possible? Feng Kuan in the Night Devourer realm can fight against high-level sky martial divine ancestors. How could he lose to a heaven tribulation divine king? With the Night Devouring realm broken, there's no way Feng Kuan could have survived. Everyone discussed animatedly, looking at Nie Tian with a suspicious gaze. Nie Tian's face was calm as he said in a loud voice, "If elders don't believe me, you can ask Great Elder." Moreover, when this empress fought Feng Kuan, there were dozens of young warriors of the Wind Demon's clan as witnesses. Everyone's expression changed, and they immediately turned to look at Feng Yaoxing. Feng Yaoxing's expression became even uglier, but he still nodded with difficulty. Then, the valley fell into dead silence again. "Beacon King, do you know that Feng Kuan is my son and the next chief of the Wind Ghost tribe?" After a while, Wind Ghost Ling Yun calmed down a lot and asked in a deep voice. "Feng Kuan provoked me first, so I had no choice but to accept the challenge." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he said, "His identity will not affect the result of the battle." The calm answer made the atmosphere tense again. "Very well, I admire Master Beacon Emperor's courage." Unexpectedly, Wind Demon suddenly laughed and said, "However, we need better proof to see if the Heaven Beacon sect is worth the alliance." Nie Tian's brow furrowed as his expression flickered. "How?" Wind Demon's eyes were slightly evil, and he said loudly, "Sect Leader Yen, please enter the valley." Nie Tian's expression involuntarily changed. He didn't know what Wind Ghost Ling Yun was up to. Just as Feng Gue Ling Yun finished speaking, a green-robed old man stepped into the valley. Behind him were a few stern-looking old men and a few young warriors. People from the Gia sect. Nie Tian did not know the elder in green walking at the front, but he recognized the other two elders. They were the ones who provoked the Gia sect at the Heaven Beacon sect. At that time, although these two did not attack, they were the ones who led the Gia sect to provoke the Heaven Beacon sect. He did not expect to meet these two here. It was obvious that these people were from the Gia sect, and the elder in green was undoubtedly of a higher status. Nie Tian secretly sensed the elder's aura, and it was not below Wind Demon's. The cyan-robed old man didn't look at Nie Tian. Instead, he smiled at Wind Ghost Ling Yun and asked, "Have you made up your mind, Wind Ghost High Chieftain?" His name was Yen Qing, the deputy sect leader of the Gia sect. He came to the Wind Demon Valley to recruit the Wind Demon's clan. Nie Tian's expression changed, and he immediately understood. It seemed that the Wind Demon did not come out to receive him not because he was busy, but because he went to receive Yen Qing. The clan leader received the Gia sect, and the Great Elder received the Heaven Beacon sect. The arrangement was very reasonable. If it was not because of Feng Kuan, Nie Tian and Yen Qing would not even know of each other's existence. Wind Demon nodded at Yen Qing, then looked at Nie Tian and said cold, "Sect Leader Yen, Sir Beacon Emperor, since both of you want to cooperate with the Wind Demon's clan, I will give you a chance to compete equally. Whoever wins, the Wind Demon's clan will cooperate with them." So this is Sir Beacon Emperor of the Heaven Beacon sect. No wonder you could defeat the disciples of the Gia sect so easily. Yen Qing looked at Nie Tian and said in a strange tone. What he meant was obvious. You are the sect leader, so it is not surprising that you can defeat the disciples of the Gia sect. Nie Tian glanced at Yen Qing and ignored him. He asked Wind Demon, "May I ask, Wind Demon clan leader, how do you want us to compete?" Wind Demon looked at the people of the Gia sect, then the people of the Heaven Beacon sect. He smirked and said in a deep voice, "It's very simple. Each side will send out 3 people. 3 battles, 2 wins out of 3. The winner will be the ally of the Wind Demon's clan." Wind Ghost clan leader, the Ghost Cliff sect doesn't just want an ally, Yen Qing said with a dark look in his eyes as soon as Wind Ghost Ling Yun finished speaking. "As long as sect leader Yen wins, I will agree to the conditions of the Gia sect." Wind Demon said in a heavy tone. "That's good." Yen Qing smiled and looked at Nie Tian with a disdainful and provocative look. He said in a cold voice, Sir Beacon Emperor, the Wind Demon clan leader has spoken, do you dare to accept? Dare to accept? This was a blatant provocation. Sir Beacon Emperor. Before Nye Tian could speak, Fan Zhong stood up and shouted. He waved his hand to signal Nye Tian not to be impulsive. A battle like this was not fair at all. The Gia sect had many powerful cultivators, while the Heaven Beacon sect only had Fan Zhong. Furthermore, the Wind Demon's suggestion was obviously to get someone else to do his dirty work. Using the Gia sect's knife to avenge Feng Kuan's crippled cultivation,